Excellent. I think we're going to start, and when the minister joins us, we will bring him in and continue that forward. Uh, it gives me a great pleasure to welcome Shri Naveen Munjalji, Shri Puneet Kauraji, and of course, we will be waiting for the Honorable Minister, Shri Kailash Gehlot, who has just joined. Welcome, sir. Uh, So we're just going to have to unmute you for a second. Very warm welcome, sir. We just got started.
Thank you. Good morning to all of you.
Namaste ji. Fantastic. I will be just giving a few opening remarks, and then of course I will hand over the conference to our conference chair, Shri Naveen Munjalji. I am delighted to have all the participants with us here today for a full day of amazing conversations around electric vehicles and what I see as the future of mankind. If we really look for the last 100 years, it has been the golden age of oil. We have taken oil and we have managed to convert it and put it into everywhere, whether it is transportations, plastics, oil touches every single part of our lives. But we have seen the consequences of what happens when you're doing this, particularly in a place like India and NCR. We have seen that every winter, no matter what we do, the consequences of oil is in our lungs. And so electrical vehicles is not something anymore in 2020 as a luxury or a privilege for people who are concerned about the environment, but are literally a reflection of where we are going as healthy human beings who are trying to do good for our communities. I see 2020 as being an inflection point for EVs, and which is why I'm very, very excited about this conference. Whether from the community road to the racetrack, we are seeing electric vehicles around the world outperform the traditional gasoline. If you want, you can go to YouTube or Google and see these amazing, amazing videos of these small electric cars being able to outperform any supercharged car just because getting from 0 to 60 in a clean, efficient fashion is absolutely easy and amazing for an electrical vehicle to do. But we are not just talking about a consumer revolution. A large part of what we are seeing in electrical vehicles comes from places like the trucking industry, which is one of the largest emitters of greenhouse emission, but it's also an industry that really, really needs an upgrade in terms of fuel, because that is a huge cost of doing business and operations. India as a country in particular, our largest import by far is oil. And with the Atmanirbhar Bharat entire movement, spearheaded, of course, by our Prime Minister, electrical vehicles provide a fantastic mid-step road in order to become truly independent as a country. Simultaneously, there are other very exciting changes happening around the world. Now, I know for some of you who are familiar with the subject, the term that nuclear fusion is 25 years away. You understand what a bit of a joke that is. But never think in the last 20 to 30 years, we've seen so many private players come into nuclear fusion. We have very, very intelligent people like Bill Gates now openly saying that nuclear fusion is the future of mankind. And when you have something as game-changing as that coming in, along with newer and newer battery technologies, grid scale storage, and which has been made possible thanks to the huge revolution we've had in solar and wind, suddenly, we all see a future in which in 15, 20 years, electrical vehicles won't be an option, they will be the default and they would be a norm. As an industry body, CII is of course committed deeply to the environment, but we're also committed to the latest and greatest innovative technologies that are coming out across the world. And fundamentally, electrical vehicles are going to be a shining light, and we are seeing that reflected in the stock prices of all the companies who are in this space. With that, I will leave you in much better and more capable hands and hand over the conference to our conference chair, Shri Naveen Munjalji, to begin with his context setting remarks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Aditya. Good morning, everybody. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today on the first CII Delhi EV Summit in collaboration with Hero Electric. Electric vehicles, as we know it, are changing the world of mobility. We are gathered here today because each of us believe in working towards new products, policies, services, solutions, which enable this shift to electric mobility. Over the past few months, the pandemic has taught us a lot and shown light towards where we are today. How we've gone from 14 of the 20 most polluted cities in the world to just 3 in a few weeks of the initial lockdown period. Unfortunately, we are heading back into that direction now again. The air at that point of time was never cleaner. The skies were the bluest ever. The waters were crystal clear, and lungs were the best ever. This goes to prove what we've been saying all along, that automotive plays a very, very important role when it comes to air pollution. And IC engine vehicles of any kind are a major cause of air pollution around the globe. People have begun to understand this, and it's venturing towards this topic more and more. And it's not just a dinner topic any longer. The government of India, through various policies, Delhi government, and numerous other states have already started moving in this direction of setting policies in place which enable electric mobility to take off. First, we came up with FAME 1 and then FAME 2, which is in place right now, and Delhi's come up with a very good EV policy. These are actions which will help drive the markets into the direction of electrification. We have here the best minds from the industry to brainstorm and to talk to you today, to share ideas on the way forward in which India would move. We have 3 panels today. We have members from the government. We have the Honorable Minister of Transport, Shri Kailash Gehlot. We have Puneet Kaura here, who's the Chairman CII Northern Region. We have Aditya, who's just given the opening remarks. He's the CII Chairman for CII Delhi. We have Jasmine Shah, who's the DDC Government of NCT Delhi. And there are numerous other friends from the topmost rungs in the electric vehicle domain from different spectrums. We've got from 3-wheelers, 2-wheelers, we've got charging, we've got swapping infrastructure, we've got technology players. So it's going to be a very, very interesting talk indeed. So electric vehicles, electric mobility is no longer just a pipe dream. It's no longer just a distant vision. We've already seen what is possible from companies like Tesla, Nikola, Brighton, Rivian, Lucid, and Harley-Davidson, and numerous others. The list is a very, very extensive one. But let's not just talk about the desirable products alone. We can look at Nissan, companies like Nissan, Hyundai, MG Motors, Mahindra, Ather, Hero Electric, Bajaj, and again, the list is an extensive one. We've come a long way from seeing a few Revas and Hero Electrics on the road a number of years back to over 1.5 lakh vehicles, EVs, which were sold last year. And this number, though is very small in the scheme of things, is increasing very rapidly. And the COVID is going to push us further through. We are on the cusp of disruption, make no mistake about it. Niti Aayog and numerous other consultants and government organizations predict a shift of 80% of the market being electric by 2030, and 30% of electric private cars being electric by 2030. There are numerous reasons why electric vehicles make more sense now than ever. There are very strong tailwinds that we have in favor of the EV industry. The first and foremost is the policy intent for electrification. We're already seeing, as I spoke about, FAME policy and the Delhi policy. Reducing battery cost is another very important factor. The batteries prices have declined by 85% in the last 10 years. I'm talking about lithium, and continue to go down further. Customer awareness has improved dramatically, is changing. With all this PR and with a lot of the webinars, etc., that are happening, the consumer mindset is changing as well. The consumer is now willing to adopt more and more electric vehicles in their ecosystem. The EV ecosystem for manufacturing, the traction, there is a substantial amount of traction in the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 suppliers who are coming in. New jobs will be created going forward. There are going to be new skill sets being required. There is going to be a reskilling of people also required. There is a shift towards cleaner electricity generation, and there is need for clean mobility from an air pollution point. Why it is important for India? Consumers post-COVID will move towards more personal mobility. We know that. Numerous reports tell us that they will not be able to, public transport will not be able to handle the volumes that they were doing with, and yet be able to maintain a full level of safety. Air pollution is a very important factor for India, and that is something that's going to play again, a very important role when it comes to COVID, moving towards electric mobility. When we look at it from a country standpoint, we have 14% of the air pollution is caused by vehicles, whereas 70%, that number jumps to 70% when we talk about large urban areas like Delhi and other cities. The vehicular travel for commercial vehicles is about 1.45 lakh kilometers per year as compared to 15,000 kilometers for private transport, for private vehicles. So that possibly is the first conversion that's going to happen. There was a recent study done by Harvard which spoke about the air pollution and COVID being a very deadly combination for the lungs. People will avoid public places as we move forward, and they will enable charging from home is going to have a very positive impact for them. Even service for home, delivery at home, which we're already doing. Customers have already begun to connect health and transport and are leaning towards EVs. Also, the power that we generate in India, about 20% of the power is renewable at this point, but that number is increasing. The second important factor is that vehicles get charged at night, which helps balancing out the grid. And the last factor when it comes to pollution, because I've been asked this a number of times, that you're taking pollution from the vehicle and putting it in the power plants. The fact is that in a power plant, it's much easier to control the air pollution than it is on each individual vehicle. The next factor is that the purchase price, though is still higher than a comparable IC vehicle, is coming down substantially. The TCO of an electric vehicle is now substantially lower than that of an IC engine counterparts. And the daily economics of an electric two-wheeler are far superior than even using public transport. Mobility will always be a basic human need. Clean air is an absolute necessity for us. The need for clean mobility has never been more than at this present time. We have to act now. Now is the best time to act. I would now like to call upon our chief guest for the day, Mr. Kailash Gehlot. He's the Honorable Minister for Transport, Law, Revenue, IT, and AR, Government of Delhi, to address the summit. But before I do that, I would like to request him to launch the report prepared by KPMG on the EV landscape in India. So, Gehlot Saab, if I can just request you to kindly launch the soft copy of the report, and we would be happy to come and give you the hard copy once over the next few days.
Right. So I press.
So this is a copy of the report. It's an extensive 40-page report, and we would be more than happy to come and give it to you, hand it to you subsequently.
Anytime.
Thank you, Gehlot Saab. Over to you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
First of all, let me congratulate the entire team of CII, and specifically Mr. Aditya, Mr. Munjal, Mr. Puneet, and the all delegates who are on this virtual conference. I think इससे बेहतर और इतना apt जो आपने electric vehicles का जो मुद्दा आज रखा है, especially in these times when we all struggle, especially in Delhi, it becomes a sort of gas chamber, and we all have been making all the efforts, especially Delhi government under the able leadership of Honorable CM Arvind Kejriwal. I was just listening what Mr. Aditya was saying and what Mr. Naveen also said, that the future is electric mobility, electric vehicles, because if we all have to survive in a clean environment, I think that is the way forward. And earlier also I have said on these different forums that pollution of any kind, whether it is air, whether it is water, of any other nature, I think it's a collective responsibility to bring down the pollution levels. I think the most visible and the one which impacts directly is the air because we breathe the same air. Last couple of months or years, as Transport Minister in Delhi government, I have ensured that we take the right steps under the able leadership Honorable CM. We came out with the electric vehicle policy. Much, I think, it has been appreciated by all stakeholders. Whether it is regarding the purchase incentives, or whether it is regarding the fee baits, or it is regarding the scrapping, रोड टैक्स जो है वो पूरा उसमें माफ कर दिया गया है, रजिस्ट्रेशन फी पूरी माफ कर दी गई है. Charging infrastructure, I think Mr. Jasmine is also there, I think in the next panel. I will leave to Jasmine to elaborate on the charging infrastructure. The only one thing which I would again emphasize, which I think Mr. Naveen also mentioned, that if we really want to encourage electric vehicles, the cost still has to come down. As you mentioned, I think Mr. Naveen again mentioned that the cost of the batteries has substantially come down. But apart from subsidies or the fee baits, I think if we really want to push electric vehicles, it has to be in the reach of a common man. जब तक एक आम आदमी बिना बहुत ज़्यादा सोचे, जैसे आज अगर वो मार्केट में जाता है तो कोई भी जो नॉर्मल जो हमारे स्कूटर है या गाड़ी है, अगर उसको उतना कंफर्ट अगर नहीं आएगा, तो मेरे ख्याल से हम जितना भी ये एफर्ट कर रहे हैं regarding the electric mobility, switching to cleaner fuel, I think it will take more time. So the best of minds are there in CII, the manufacturers. I think they all should come together and try and bring down the cost so that it is within the reach of the common man. आपने बिल्कुल ठीक कहा जब कहा आपने कि लगभग 1,40,000, if I've got the right the figure, 1,40,000 kilometers the commercial vehicles travel in a year. So it has to start with the commercial vehicles. और 15,000 किलोमीटर आपने कहा एक साल में प्राइवेट व्हीकल का. You must have read in the newspapers or the media, we also started with the hydrogen spiked CNG. Just 2 days back, we inaugurated the first of its kind in the entire country, which will also, I think, help apart from the electric mobility. अगर 70% कार्बन मोनोऑक्साइड अगर कम हो सकता है या 25% अगर हाइड्रोकार्बन कम हो सकता है, एट द सेम टाइम अगर उसका फ्यूल एफिशिएंसी 3 से 4% अगर बढ़ सकता है, then I think that is also a welcome step and the right step in the right direction to cut down the pollution levels. Mr. Aditya, I think, rightly pointed out that going forward, the future of mankind, I have been saying this earlier also, that I think electric mobility का कोई और दूसरा रास्ता नहीं है, but हम जितना जल्दी इस टेक्नोलॉजी को अडॉप्ट करेंगे, उतना ही हम सबके लिए, पूरे विश्व के लिए, पूरे देश के लिए, हम सब के लिए बेहतर होगा. ऑयल के कॉन्सिक्वेंसेस मिस्टर आदित्य ने बिल्कुल rightly pointed out, and he also rightly pointed out that sooner than later it should become the default. And this is what exactly I was pointing earlier, that any customer or any citizen, when he goes out or plans to buy a vehicle, then the electric vehicle as an option should become the default. So that is what exactly I was trying to tell. The cost, I understand there is anxiety in the minds of people regarding the charging, कि भाई अगर मैं अपना इलेक्ट्रिक व्हीकल लेके निकला और अगर उसको और ज्यादा ट्रेवल करना पड़ा, तो क्या जिस प्रकार से अभी फ्यूल पंप्स हर 1 किलोमीटर 2 किलोमीटर पे मिलते हैं, क्या उसको चार्जिंग स्टेशन भी उस प्रकार से उपलब्ध होंगे? And that is what exactly we have tried to address in the electric vehicle policy also. that one charging station in a radius of 3 kilometer. And I think we've already started working on that. Couple of charging stations have already come up. We've already held a couple of meetings. And as chairman of the state EV board, I will also have a meeting with all the stakeholders, all the landowning agencies, whether it is DDA or MCD or the oil companies, whether Delhi government departments. I think we will ensure that the necessary charging infrastructure is there, so that there is no anxiety in the minds of people की charging मिलेगा. Swapping का भी हमने उसमें अपनी पॉलिसी में जिक्र किया है. We have also kept few milestones कि इतना percent I think by 2024 we lost a couple of months because of the COVID, but we'll surely try and catch up. We have also set target कि जितना भी vehicles Delhi government अपने officers के लिए, अपने employees के लिए use कर रही है, उसका एक specific percentage convert हो. Regarding the home delivery services of any kind, we have set different targets for that also. We stand committed. I have said this earlier also. I am again reiterating what I said earlier. On behalf of entire Delhi government, on behalf of Honorable CM, the Delhi government stands committed to ensure that we move towards electric mobility. जितने ज़्यादा electric vehicles हमारे दिल्ली की सड़कों पे ही नहीं, बल्कि अगर पूरे देश में भी अगर दौड़ेंगे तो उतना ही हम सबके लिए वो अच्छा होगा. We will cut down the pollution levels. Mr. Naveen mentioned 14% pollution from the vehicles. I think as per our data, we have it's around 17 to 18%. The vehicles contribute around 17 to 18% of the total pollution which is coming out from the vehicles. It's a substantial. If we are all able to cut down even maybe 30% of it, 40% of it, 50% of it, then I think it is a substantial, it will be a substantial achievement. I only hope that all the OEMs, they come together. I'm mentioning it again and again because, and I've been saying this from day one, the cost of the electric vehicles must come down. The सबसे ज़्यादा उसका cost का component battery है. And I think we as a nation, not only we, but I think the entire world is dependent regarding battery का जब भी बात आता है तो I think only one country which we are dependent on. उसका भी कुछ ना कुछ हमें तरीका हमें निकालना चाहिए कि हमारे जो डिपेंडेंसी है वो एक उस कंट्री पे कम हो. With these words, I once again congratulate the entire team, the entire CII, all delegates on this virtual conference, and I hope that we are ready with the entire incentive scheme. We are ready with the website of electric mobility. I think we will be starting with the campaign maybe anytime next week, and we have ensured that whatever any person who purchases the vehicle, he doesn't face any kind of difficulty at all. It's absolutely software based, and it is our endeavor that we release the subsidy or whatever the purchase incentive or whether it is exemption of the road tax maybe within next जब वो गाड़ी खरीदता है तो उसके 4 से 5 दिन के अंदर अंदर हम वो पूरा सब्सिडी उसको रिलीज कर देंगे. दिस इज व्हाट we will strive at, and I once again congratulate the entire team, and I hope that we together we are able to make a difference, and we together we are able to encourage people, push electric mobility so that we all benefit from it. Thank you so much.
Honorable Minister, thank you so much for those amazing words. And I think all of us here are very heartened to see the leadership that the Delhi government is taking in this area. So we've had considerable success working with the Delhi government on environment and other issues. If I may propose, as you had rightly said, this requires a very tight coordination with all industry members, OEM suppliers, as well as the Delhi government. If you could propose a joint working group, as we have done on previous subjects with the government, that might help, particularly during this crucial time as this new policy is launched. I'll request our directors and all in CII to be in touch with your office.
Sure, anytime. I think मैंने पहले भी कहा है कि हमारी मुलाकात सिर्फ इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के ओकेजन पे नहीं होनी चाहिए. It has to be.
Sir, your words have deeply hit us all at heart. We will make sure that an EV focused delegation comes to you
anytime
sooner rather than later.
We are already working with a lot of other organizations, whether it is RMI. RMI has contributed a lot. WRI, we are working very closely on other issues also, whether it is road safety or there are other institutions also we are working with, like IIITD, or whether it's DTU, contactless ticketing. The entire concept has been developed by Professor Biani. So we will be more than happy. I can assure you this much that आप जिस भी प्रकार से दिल्ली गवर्नमेंट का सपोर्ट चाहते हैं, we are more than willing. We are available 24 hours for this noble cause.
Thank you so much, sir. We will absolutely follow up, and we have seen that in all our endeavors with the Delhi government. The forward positivity, close cooperation is something all of us in industry very, very much appreciate. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Aditya, and you please continue. I wish you all the best for the future discussions which will happen in different panels, and I'm sure something very interesting will come out. And I think I'll take leave.
Thank you so much, sir. I just want to thank you and the Delhi government for this amazing policy you guys have come up with. It's a very good policy, and it's certainly going to propel electric mobility in Delhi. One of the factors which I have seen in the policy, which is actually a very good one, is that of mandating of the delivery sector. The delivery vehicles in Delhi. So India, as we know, 80% of the vehicles on the road actually are two-wheelers. And majority of these vehicles which are used for the delivery segment are actually the old ones. They don't even comply with a lot of these norms that we have now. And these are the vehicles which easily can be converted. So I'm very happy to see that there is mandating and there is a nudge in that direction. This will certainly yield a lot of fruit for the Delhi, for the people of Delhi. It's going to be very, very beneficial. Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. From CII Delhi office, so we will come with the delegation and seek time from your office to meet on this subject, sir.
Please, you're most welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir, for the great work your party is doing, and I think Delhi is very privileged to have a chief minister like Shri Arvind Kejriwal, and I think I would like to thank you again from CII's behalf. Thank you so much, sir, for your
Thank you, Mr. Puneet.
Thank you. Thank you. So, Puneet, with that, could I ask you to actually give the vote of thanks?
Actually, it starts with thanking him. So. That's why
he's gone, but yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I would just like to again congratulate CII for organizing such an important event. You know, this time of the year, every year, we come under this problem of pollution in Delhi. And it goes on for at least a couple of months, maybe longer. And then slowly it dies down over the next year, early next year, and then we forget about it sometimes in the middle of the year. I think this is a year-on problem. And as the chairman of the Northern Region Committee for Air Pollution and looking at the aspects of the vehicular pollution, this is a very, very important subject. And as the minister said, 17 to 18% of the pollution that happens in our urban cities is because of vehicular pollution. So obviously this becomes a very central or critical point for the environment as a whole, not only for India, of course Delhi, but also for the whole world. I think clearly this is at the heart of the problem, and I'm pretty sure that electric vehicles is going to play a very critical role, very important role as we move along, because the whole idea of kind of moving from emissions to electric and bringing the emissions down is the electric vehicle is in the heart of that plan. So it becomes very important for us as we move forward. Um, I think the efforts taken in this area are showing results. Clearly, they're showing results, and I'm sure that it will continue. And Again, it's my pleasure to be present here today and to listen to all these this very important topic, which is also a need of the hour. As per the study, and it was I think mentioned some time back as well, in India, we breathe air that is 10 times or more over the WHO safe norms. I think 13 of the world's 20 cities with the highest annual levels of air pollution are in India, where NCR, especially Delhi and Gurgaon, have been ranked as the most polluted capital in the world, and other satellite towns around it suffer as well. Today, one of the biggest threats to the welfare of the people, to the welfare of the people, is pollution. And I think, as I said in the beginning, electric vehicle plays a very big part as we move along in our plans. Against the backdrop, it becomes even more important that as a business leadership organization, we create a defined agenda and work towards an environment protection and pollution-free region, so that in this regard, plug-in electric vehicles can play a very important role. I think the recent pandemic COVID-19 situation have made us realize clear and blue skies are possible. If you remember the period when the lockdown started, and many months after that, the air we breathed was much better than the previous years. And it was all because of, clearly because of the way our environment was less disturbed by people like us, whether it was on roads, whether it was in our industries. And this was very evident that as that um, uh, lockdown took place, the environment was healed. We saw many evidences of that during that period, and this clearly shows that the clean air is possible. Uh, Again, I firmly believe that the new electric vehicle policy created by the Delhi government will not only help environment, but this will also help stakeholders from EV industry to grow and have better coverage. And Naveen ji would, I think, would be playing a very critical role in this with Hero Electric in the play. I would also congratulate Mr. Munjal once again for taking a leadership position from industry inside and for facilitating a positive ecosystem for all the stakeholders involved in EV, especially in two-wheeler segment. I would like to thank all the speakers who would be joining us for the summit today. I would also like to place on record my appreciation for the companies who have come forward to share their efforts and knowledge, which allows us others to learn from it. I would like to thank CII, continue to make efforts in an untiring manner. I'm sure that the efforts will continue and we will see members making greater efforts in this direction. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the sponsors, even powered by Hero Electric, our sponsors Kinetic Green, Revolt Motors, Yulo Bikes, Lono Tap, and APJ Satya University, and KPG, our knowledge partner, who have been a great support to the program. Thank you all. I really look forward to a very robust and energetic discussion ahead during the day in the summit. We have 3 more sessions during the day, requesting you all to please connect it. Thank you so much once again.
Can I request Mr. Munjal? There are 2 questions that are that audience have placed in. If we can take before we hand over to Mr. Gill, please.
Sure, I see one of them is being any plan for lithium-ion battery cell manufacturing infrastructure in India, raw materials, etc. which is for, and the second one I'm seeing, which is what roles can existing petrol pumps play to provide EV charging stations. Now, let me address the first one. For EV, for lithium-ion cell manufacturing, the cells manufacturing, I'm not saying the packaging of the cells, but for manufacturing, you need a very large volume, which we don't have in India as of now. We don't really have the scale. So what is going to happen is that the bottom of the pyramid, it's going to be a pyramidal formation, where the bottom of the pyramid is going to be formed by two-wheelers and by three-wheelers. These vehicles will enable the volumes on the top of which you could possibly then start looking at manufacturing cells, etc. Till such time as we don't get that required volume, packaging to be the next best viable option. And even things like, so when we look at electric mobility, first and foremost, you have to break it up. The electric mobility, the needs and requirements of electric mobility for different segments is very, very different from each other. So two-wheelers require have a different need, three-wheelers have a different need, four-wheelers and cars have a different need, and then public transport and commercial vehicles have a different need in terms of infrastructure. So whenever there is any conversation or any report that comes out at an international level, and when they talk about electric mobility, effectively they're talking about cars, they're not talking about two-wheelers. However, India, since we are a very large two-wheeler market, and here price sensitivity is a very important factor, the base is going to be formed by two-wheelers and three-wheelers, on top of which we'll have cars and we will have public transport as well. And public transport is there for a different reason, because that is what moves India in a lot of ways as well. So cell manufacturing though it will happen, you do need the volume for it, but it's a chicken and egg situation. Should the cell manufacturing happen first, or are you going to wait for the volumes to come in first? But in our opinion, what we believe is both have to go hand in hand and parallel to each other. Waiting for the volumes to come in and then getting into cell manufacturing may be too late as well. So once we know that the writing is on the wall, the conversion is going to happen, it's time to start looking at investing into cell manufacturing as well over a period of time. And the second question was,
I just want to add here one thing. I think one of the fundamental shifts that we have to make in our mindset is stop looking at EVs, as a nice to have or a luxury thing, and say that, look, lithium and rare earth metals, just like oil was in the last 100 years, is a strategic asset the government needs to invest in and manage. We have fought wars over oil. We have deployed huge naval battleships to keep oil shipping lanes open. This is the history of the modern world of the 20th century and even some of the 21st century. I think that this is a perfect example where a national government has to step in. There have been lithium reserves and rare earth reserves found in India. But as Naveenji has put it, because of the chicken and egg, where the demand isn't high enough to justify the kind of huge investments that private industry makes, this is where we should see a concentrated effort by the government to really help unlock some of these very basic mining. Obviously, as Naveenji said, that going from mining to refining to then properly putting into an infrastructure that goes into EV, that is still debatable on the chicken and egg. But certainly, I think having access to rare earth metals and lithium is no longer something which is a supply chain issue. It is a strategic issue, just like oil, just like any other major mineral. So, sorry, Naveenji, I thought I would add in, it's not just private industry, government has to step up as well here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Aditya, for chipping in there. But another factor that I want to address is that, there is been a lot of talk that there is only dependence on one country for these rare earth materials and for other metals that go into the manufacturing of lithium-ion batteries. That is not necessarily the case. There are numerous countries which hold the reserves. There are numerous other countries which also have ownership of those mines. So it's not just dependence on one country which is going to be the answer for us. The next question that was asked there is, how soon are we looking to move away from China in terms of dependency on motor and battery manufacturing? It's already, there's already localization happening, and that's been in the process for a long time. The fact is that when you look at any kind of manufacturing, any kind of engineering item, it's a matter of volume. So if the volumes justify, then manufacturing does make a lot more sense. That said, in the last 2 years, there's been already a move towards localization in a huge way. Atmanirbhar program has been on, and we've been really pushing localization in a big way. Cells are still, like I said, are not getting manufactured, but it's a matter of time before they also start getting manufactured in India. For everything else, there are local suppliers as well and local vendors. And the last question I'm just taking here before I move on to the panel is what roles can existing petrol pumps play in providing EV charging stations? See, while petrol pumps are a space where you could actually go and effectively charge EVs, but that's not a very effective use of the real estate. So imagine a scenario where you've got a petrol pump. You can't go and park 50 vehicles there to charge. I'm talking about cars. I'm not talking about two-wheelers here. So you can't go and park 50 vehicles or 20 vehicles there to charge. And where do you go from there? How long are you gone from there? Where can you really head out? So petrol pumps, though, will play a somewhat of a role, but it's not that much of a large role. What petrol pumps would play a more important role is when we come down to swapping, and when that happens for maybe the three-wheelers and the two-wheelers, etc. There, the petrol pumps infrastructure could be used for swapping of the batteries. A very important factor which is there for any success of electric mobility is dense charging infrastructure. So you have to have a grid. Now, let's look at for cars. When you're traveling in an electric car, for example, you don't want to be worried about the range anxiety. That's a very big factor, that very, very big problem that exists, range anxiety. How far can I go with my battery that I have? Can I go from Delhi, Gurgaon to Noida 3 times or twice in a day if I have to? So you do need that charging infrastructure to be there somewhere where you can stand, park your vehicle for half an hour, charge, get a bit of a top up and then move along. Now, when it comes to two-wheelers, for example, effectively a large number of the vehicles will get charged at home. In fact, all our product range has portable batteries, so you can take them out, take them into your apartment, charge them and plug them back in. So a large number of vehicles actually have portable batteries where the requirement of dense charging infrastructure is there, but it's not a deal breaker from that sense, because you would effectively charge at home. And in fact, we've just launched a vehicle for a heavy users also, which goes to 210 kilometers, 200 plus kilometers on a single charge. So there is numerous options available for two-wheelers, but you need a very, very dense but simple charging infrastructure for two-wheelers and a dense but high-speed charging infrastructure for cars. And three-wheelers could actually effectively work with the swapping infrastructure rather than so much of a charging infrastructure. That said, I'm going to introduce the first panel of the day to you. This is Can Delhi Breathe Easy by Switching to Electric Mobility? The moderator for this session is Mr. Sohinder Gill, CEO, Hero Electric Vehicles. And we've got very strong panelists here. We've got Jasmine Shah, who's the Vice Chairman, Dialogue and Development Commission, Government of NCT of Delhi. And Jasmine has played a very crucial role in the new policy that has just been launched by Delhi. Thank you so much, Jasmine, for that. Besides Jasmine, we have Mr. Abhishek Saxena here. He's the public policy expert at Young Professional Niti Aayog. He's also online. We've got Sulaja Prodya Motwani here. She's the Vice Chairman, Kinetic Engineering and founder of CEO of Kinetic Green Energy and Power Solutions. And lastly, we have Mr. Kannan V. Subramaniam here, who's the DGM at Bosch Automotive Electronics. So over to you, Mr. Gill. Wishing you all a great session ahead. Thank you.
Mr. Gill, you are on mute, please.
Thank you, Naveen, and good morning to all, and a special good morning to the panelists, esteemed bench of panelists, and a short time. We have only 45 minutes, not real justice, but we'll try to do our best. A bit of guidelines, because we have a short time on our head. I think we'll have only 2 rounds of questions here, and brevity is the name of the game. So let's be brief on our comments and points, and let's be specific to Delhi. And also, let's be specific to a short or a mid-term type of a thinking, not a very long-term type of a thinking here. Because Delhi has already set an example for others. Delhi has set a benchmark for others, especially states, for what an EV policy can be and what potentially it can do to achieve the targets what the country is trying to set for itself. Now, between that policy and the action on the ground is what today we are supposed to discuss, because can Delhi breathe easy? I'm quite sure that transportation sector is one of the major contributors here, even if we talk of all that crop burning and building dust. Some of those things are not really in control of Delhi, but transportation sector is surely so. So the subject is really dear to our heart to discuss at least what is in our control, what is in our hand. Can that contribute to let Delhiites, me, you and everybody, breathe easier, become healthier, and also adopt a futuristic technology? So I'm very confident, and we have been interacting so often with Jasmine and the government, that the government has done its quite a bit of whatever was supposed to be done. The best part of this policy from Delhi has been a very close interaction with the government circles. Like we had umpteens of meetings, starting with so many people in Delhi administration, culminating into with Jasmine, that was a good thing that happened, that integration and discussion churning out. So that is one of the examples that other states have to take. And second is, Delhi has set right that major sort of a conception that everybody has. Like states say, come start manufacturing. Delhi says, okay, let's create demand. The manufacturing would happen. That's a basic difference. So let's start the session. Let's do justice to the subject. And let's come to the point straight away. So Jasmine, you are always in the bullseye, and you're always being bombarded from all around. So same here. My first question to you is, looking back, what is one thing you would have liked to add, one thing delete, and one thing change in the Delhi policy?
So first, I'm thankful for CII to organize this kind of a discussion and the EV summit. We've had some of these discussions before the Delhi EV policy. I think this is one of the first ones after the government has come out with its much awaited EV policy. So it's my pleasure to be a part of this forum. And Mr. Gill, I think we who are inside the Delhi government haven't awarded ourselves the luxury of reflecting back, because we are very much now in the action mode, because this policy has been, as you rightly said, for a long time in the works. India's history has been about graveyard of announcements and policies on electric vehicles. And we were very keen on, coming out with something that is workable, but also focuses on the right target segments of, vehicles that, or mobility rather, that need to be transitioned towards electric vehicles first. So certainly, the policy is not trying to ensure that each and every segment moves towards EVs. In that sense, there may be a few disappointments here and there. But it is also important to realize that Delhi's EV policy is not an industrial policy. Like you rightly said, and even the signal from the government of India, because this is housed under DHI, is that this is an industrial development scheme or an initiative. However, when it comes to Delhi, this is part of our environmental strategy. The entire reason Delhi government is ambitiously putting its own funds, its own resources into, because these are, over time, this will amount to a substantial investment that Delhi is making. And that is because for the health of our residents, this is for the lives of the children and all the people who want to make Delhi their home. And, this sort of thinking that was at least starting to take ground, that maybe Delhi is not redeemable as far as the pollution problem is concerned. And let's start thinking about moving out of Delhi. And that is the kind of thinking that we wanted to address or attack at its roots. So electric vehicles, and you will see that thinking across each and every source of pollution that, as you rightly said, we can control in Delhi. Many studies show the contribution of maybe crop stubble burning or even other sources, industrial pollution in Delhi. Most of the polluting industries are not in Delhi. We have shut them down. They've all moved outside Delhi. But there's absolutely no regulation, be it on thermal power plants or brick kilns, and many of these polluting sources. The moment you move out of Delhi, you will see they operate in a largely haphazard and unregulated manner. So, I mean, while we raise those issues, we were very focused that, be it the issue of crop stubble burning, because Delhi also has a few thousand hectares of farmland, or electric vehicle policy, Delhi should set an example of what is possible on the policy front. And that is where you see in our EV policy. And when you look at the pollution studies, it is the two-wheelers, it is the three-wheelers, and the shared transport and the delivery vehicles who are on the street for the maximum period of time. And they were our first targets in terms of if we are able to transition them to electric vehicles, then it's just not about saying how many numbers of vehicles, but you're actually addressing pollution, because these are the vehicles who are most on the streets and are the most polluting. So I would say that we are at this point in time firmly focused in ensuring that this is a policy that does not remain on paper. Each and every commitment that we have made under the policy is implemented in a time-bound manner. And you must have seen that in the last 2 weeks, be it the road tax exemption or registration fees exemption, the government is very much on its way trying to implement each and every aspect of our policy. There is a major piece of work that we have also initiated on setting up a dense grid of public charging infrastructure. As Mr. Naveen Munjal was just mentioning, the entire approach that we have taken in Delhi is not just to say that throw a few incentives and say that the government has done its bit. No, if there are 3 or 4 bottlenecks that is preventing the entire EV ecosystem from taking off, then the Delhi government sees its role in addressing each part of this bottleneck. Certainly not by itself. This is too large a problem that the government is under no delusion that by doing a few things here and there, we will have the entire EV ecosystem take off. We need the participation of all the stakeholders in ensuring that the dream of making Delhi the EV capital of India comes true. But as I mentioned, be it the incentives structure that addresses and targets the right amount of incentives at the right segment. Second is the charging infrastructure, where we are working towards building a dense grid of both battery swapping as well as a public charging infrastructure. Third is also about raising this as the awareness amongst the people, because what we still find is that people really do not have a very high opinion of whether electric vehicles are durable, will they last, even for travel within Delhi. And the government is working on a big awareness campaign, which I don't think any other state or city in the country has undertaken, to address some of these concerns. So, as I said, yes, glass can always be half full or half empty. Our goal and objective at this point in time is that whatever promises we have made under the EV policy are fulfilled and are fulfilled to the satisfaction of everyone. But if there are any suggestions and comments that come through this discussion, we are very happy to take note of them as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jasmine. You have comprehensively covered Delhi policy. In fact, it's one of the most read policies these days in all the digital media. And thank you again for cleverly sidelining my questions. 3 questions of addition, deletion, or changes. But anyway, I'm going to gun my shot to Sulija, who is other stakeholder, major stakeholder in this, and ask the same questions to her, because her knife-edge comments, comprehensive opinions are well respected in the industry. So Sulija, you can tell me on behalf of Jasmine 3 things that you would have done differently had you been the Delhi policy creator. You're on mute, Sulija.
Good morning to all of you, and it's a pleasure to be here on this forum with all the stakeholders in the Delhi EV ecosystem. But I must begin first of all by thanking Delhi government and especially Jasmine Ji for a really very positive step forward in the electrification of Delhi. I want to say that this particular policy is very far-sighted. As he mentioned that pollution is a big concern for Delhi residents. So not only it addresses, a burning issue for the residents, but also electric vehicles are the future of automotive technology. So doing this kind of path-breaking work to set ground for a long-term transition, I think, it's very far-sighted. Secondly, as has been discussed, it's a demand creation-oriented policy with a 360-degree view. So that's a very comprehensive kind of an approach to create a population on the streets of Delhi. And I think it will set an example for the rest of the country. So I think in that sense, everybody is looking at how the policy can make a big difference. And last, also it's relevant. So instead of looking at cars or buses only, which have less volume or less chance of immediate electrification, focusing on the low-hanging fruit, or the quick gains, which is 2 and 3 wheelers, which also is relevant for the common man, the masses. I think these are the very positive points about this policy. If I were to really think about a few things that we can further consider to make this policy even more impactful, I would say that the first is that I was personally a little bit disappointed that the subsidies are also extended to the non-FAME compliant e-rickshaws. And I think Delhi has been one city where there is a large population of these imported kit-based e-rickshaws, many of which are plying still illegally without permit, without registration and without insurance. And they are therefore unsafe for the Delhi residents. And they do not follow the required norms. So they may get a vehicle homologated with the right parts, but then what they're actually selling is actually vehicles which do not conform even to the basic homologation standards. So as we move ahead and we have more and more organized players like Kinetic and Hero and others come in the market, I would urge the Delhi government to think about how we can move to better quality electric vehicles with the higher standards of safety and performance, so that the safety of passengers in the Delhi and the Delhi residents can be ensured. So this is one area I just think that we can think about in the future. Second, I think I was very happy to see that three-wheelers and especially loaders have been given a lot of attention, and of course two-wheelers. I would like to urge Jasmine ji that maybe we can think about e-cycles as well, because we are seeing that there's a good demand upswing in electric cycles. Post-COVID, the bottom of the pyramid would rather not travel in the buses, but look at having personal independent transport, for example. And electric cycles could be a very good option for them, because it's affordable. It could be made affordable with some support from the Delhi EV policy in terms of some upfront incentives. But at the same time, it also has less physical effort than regular cycles. It has a technology and a cool quotient. It's green. So I think e-cycles could really be an area that we can look at. And for students, for the elderlies, and even for the bottom of the pyramid, the migrants, this could be a really interesting area that can be looked at. And the third thing I would say, not in terms of changes to the policy, but I would really like to request the government, implementation has been a forte of Delhi government. They have done a wonderful job, whatever they have started. So I think the next 2-3 months, as Jasmine ji mentioned, are very critical that we implement all the initiatives that are envisaged. For example, permits for electric three-wheelers need to be, made open. That's a very big area. And the ecosystem for charging, swapping, these should, quickly be set up, and we are happy to give all our support and cooperation for this. So there are a few inputs, but by and large, I think the policy is wonderful. I think it hit the bullseye, and very few areas of criticism. Just a few suggestions for taking it ahead. So thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much. In fact, we nowhere should call any of these things as criticisms. They are milder areas for improvement. Particularly, you hit the right spot saying that the lead battery products, which are non-FAME compliant, they have been included, especially three-wheelers, and the lithium battery two-wheelers, which are a larger choice of customers in Delhi, around 90% people buy that, have been left out. Perhaps for Jasmine, that's a food for thought at some point of time, because other than that, Delhi sells less than 300 to 400 a month of FAME compliant high-speed two-wheelers. And from 300, if you want to go to 1 lakh, it's a humongous task. So great policy, a bit here and there areas for improvement. 2 of them were very clear things that should happen perhaps in a few months from now. Abhishek, like we haven't interacted, but like from association, we have been interacting almost everybody in Niti Aayog, right from Amitabh ji down to Anil and everybody else. And we hold Niti Aayog at a very high pedestal because we believe that they are ultimate integrators and thought leaders who would get everybody together into oneness of purpose, and also a good connect between the Prime Minister office and the ministries. I'm personally disappointed at Niti Aayog's past 1 or 2 years, influence and sort of a pressure onto the ministries to come out with a policy which is very, very friendly to the customer as well as not anti-industry. So my question to you, Abhishek, is that already in the Delhi policy also, in the last panel I had with the Delhi government and MOSRT was there, I was already hearing some cracks that like MOSRT is saying we do not have any even clear blueprint of what Delhi is wanting to do and what they want us to do. Because such a thing cannot, whatever they are saying, we will not be able to implement as far as commercial vehicles are concerned. So do you think the Niti Aayog should play a much more important link and part in any central policy or any state policy which has a bearing on central government ministries, so that at least we thrash it out before we announce the policies? Over to Abhishek.
Thank you, Gilji, and thank you, CII, for having this very timely discussion on Delhi EV policy. So first things first, let me just congratulate Delhi government for bringing out such a wonderful policy. It's very comprehensive, very exhausting, and it takes into account multiple areas which a city-state like Delhi should have focused on. And my congratulations to the Delhi government for bringing out such a comprehensive policy. And it is, the discussion is very opportune, at a time when we are heading into winters and the pollution discourse becomes really active these times. To my mind, this is the biggest public health emergency, not exactly comparable to COVID, but in no ways less than COVID also. So does that these kinds of discussion actually give it a platform to improve the public discourse, improve the decision making by the policymakers, by different governments, bring all the stakeholders together. So congratulations, CII, for this. So I think you've raised a couple of questions on the role of Niti Aayog and what it should do. Specifically in the context of cooperative federalism. So Niti Aayog has a very strong pillar of cooperative federalism, and under the guidance of Honorable Prime Minister of India, we have taken multiple engagements with the state governments. So these expand to areas of health education, but I'll not delve into those. Let me just briefly elaborate on what it has done with on the area of electric vehicles. So with all the state governments, and I think Delhi government has been an active member of those forums, where we engaged with the governments to come up with the strategy papers. I think it was close to 3 years now. So that was the first step which government started taking in the movement towards electric vehicles. At that point, the idea of electric vehicles among the policy makers was starting to get some kind of attraction. It was coming into the central discourse. So that was the first idea, and we have regularly interacted. We have regularly created forums at Niti Aayog where different stakeholders, including state governments, academia, industry bodies, they can all come together and tell us what we as Niti Aayog needs to do, and we can obviously handhold states in moving forward with their EV policies, with their specific directions which they want to move. And these ambitions and goals vary from a state to state. As I think Jasmine rightly mentioned, that it's an environmental policy for Delhi, and fair enough. So Delhi doesn't have a lot of industries. They don't want to delve into those areas, but a state like a Maharashtra or a Telangana would be very keen on generating employment and generating manufacturing base, improving their state GDP through use of it as a tool for industrial policy, which a lot of countries have already done. So I think the motives could be different. How Niti Aayog comes into picture is, integrating those ambitions, integrating those outlooks together and creating a central framework around that. So we have worked with all the 9 ministries at the central government. We have worked with all the state governments, and I must say that every line ministry and every state government is very positive about this. So I think this is one of the areas where they have actually taken a real lead, and they have come back to Niti Aayog saying that, okay, we want this kind of a support. So there is a strong enthusiasm at their level also. Now, to your specific question on, can Delhi government actually look at the implementation part of it? See, I have my reservations on that aspect. Niti Aayog is a public policy think tank of India. It acts as a coordinating body. We have a national mission on transformative mobility and battery storage, which is chaired by CEO Mr. Amitabh Kant. So in that aspect, we are coordinating, and we are trying to resolve any bottlenecks and any policy level decisions that has to be taken up. So for last 2.5 years, we have taken around 24 policy decisions at the central level. So these includes FAME, reduction of GST, permit waivers, registration fee, road tax waiver, green license plate, and umpteen number of other measures. So, in the central governance structure, every line ministry is responsible for their implementation. So I am pretty confident that Niti Aayog can actually act as an advisory body to those line ministries, but getting their hands directly on the implementations, I have my certain reservations on that part of it. And if there are any policy bottlenecks that Niti Aayog needs to delve into those areas with the state governments or with even the municipal governments I'm talking about, because a lot of it has to do, we have not delved into that, looking at municipal governments of creating separate EV zones, or creating a congestion pricing, or creating pollution free vehicle zone of that kind. So I think a lot of work needs to be done at that level also, and Niti Aayog is very keen on exploring those areas, and we are continuously interacting with all these bodies. So Niti Aayog is a kind of a coordinating body, kind of a direction creating body for the central government, and it takes inputs from all these ministries. So in that aspect, I see the role of Niti Aayog in these specific areas. That is something I wanted to bring to the table.
Well, thank you, Abhishek. Perhaps it could also be a difference between the perception, especially of the OEMs, about what Niti Aayog can do versus what you are explaining, that what Niti Aayog should do, or really what are the boundaries. But I'd like to rope in Shulaja here for the same discussion, particularly on the FAME 2, which is a backbone of all such policies, because Delhi policy is riding on FAME 2, right? And FAME 2, universally we know, has not really been a failure, but yes, not been a really splendid success. Because electric vehicles in India will happen. Nobody can stop them. But the question is, will they happen on their own in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years? Or has the time come? As Niti Aayog keeps on saying, the time for two-wheeler is already there. The time for three-wheeler is there. And the buses are the agenda. From that point of view, whatever could have been achieved in FAME 2, we are a fraction of that. And that is where, again and again, I would like Shulaja to rope in Shulaja to see on FAME 2 particularly, because that gives the really meat on the plate for other states to follow. FAME 2 has not been able to trigger the expected growth in the electric vehicles. And like what can be done now, at least, let's leave the past, of involving Niti Aayog or ministries or DHI, etc., to bring back FAME 2 on track, so that Delhi policy and FAME 2 together at least can create a great example for the country. So Shulaja and Abhishek both can comment on it.
Okay, so I can say that this is a topic quite close to my heart because it impacts us quite significantly. I think in principle, FAME 2 is a well-designed policy. in terms of linking the incentive. There is a clear-cut thought process on promoting two-wheeler, three-wheeler, and buses, which are the, as I said earlier, low-hanging fruit. Earlier, FAME 1 had a lot of other elements, a lot of noise about hybrid vehicles, cars, which was quite ineffective in terms of making a real difference to the electrification. So the thinking is in the right direction. The incentive scheme is clear in terms of linking it to the size of the battery system, which I think also makes it simpler for implementation. I think where FAME 2 has little bit lost its way, and I think we need to work together to bring it, as Soinderji said, back on track, looking ahead. One is that the implementation was quite, if I can use the word unplanned. So on March 21st, we were informed about the policy, and on April 1st, it was implemented. Which involved rehomologation of vehicles, new localization norms, some of which things are impossible to do in 10 days. And even after we really ran around and did a lot of these things, DHI's own software and their own systems took almost 6 months to fall in place. So perhaps it would have been more effective to give a transition period of 6 months for OEMs to get ready and for the DHI agencies to really gear up on implementation side. So I'm not sure if there's any learning here for Delhi EV policy because it's on a clean slate. But I think there is one input that it takes a little time, 1 to 3 months, for things to fall into place. And, that needs to be built into the policy. Now, I think FAME incentive release is become, streamlined. But we lost a lot of time in the initial period. And even today, there is a lot of confusion in FAME 2 about homologation, rehomologation, localization, deadlines. And especially in view of COVID, there's a whole amount of confusion. So I think there needs to be some more dialogue with DHI, which I certainly believe that Niti Aayog can facilitate, to review where FAME 2 stands and how we can bring it on track to take into account the issues that are faced by OEMs in terms of availability of local parts, in terms of homologation costs, homologation timelines, so we can effectively avail of this incentive and it becomes a more thought through implementation. The second point, I think, where FAME is struggling today is in the localization. Due to COVID, a lot of the local auto component companies have pushed back their EV component plans. So I think recently there has been a notification that the deadline is now March 2021. But I think a more comprehensive dialogue, along with involving the component makers, to figure out whether there are any tweaking needed to ensure that on March 2021 everybody is qualifying for FAME 2 who is capable of qualifying for FAME 2. So I think it's more an implementation issue and a little bit more listening to the industry that has gone off track. I strongly personally believe that Niti Aayog has a strong role to play. What Niti Aayog does is that it is the voice of the government. So if the Indian government's focus is on electrification, on electric mobility, Niti Aayog can be the kind of a driving force behind making it happen by talking to the various ministries. Certain ministries are fast, certain ministries are slow, certain are very bureaucratic. Sometimes the ministry itself is not bureaucratic, but there are a lot of changes. So ministers change, secretaries change, and there's nobody who's willing to listen and take anything ahead. And things get lost in translation and in timelines. But Niti Aayog is one body which can, keep everybody on the same page. Wherever industry is facing difficulty, they can push through the agenda. Wherever there are changes required, they can work with the different ministry groups to bring everybody on the same page. And I think a lot more needs to be done in this regard. With respect to DHI, I think last 1 year we are all facing a lot of issues because of changes at the top, whether it's ministers or secretaries, and these issues with FAME 2. We need help from DHI or Niti Aayog to bring some kind of move forward. And I think we'd be happy to have a dialogue separately. If you invite the industry, we can come and have a dialogue with you and reset, as Soinderji said, what we have to do for the next 1 or 2 years, so that not only in Delhi but even across the other areas we can move ahead on the momentum for electrification. And I do see a large role for Niti Aayog as a driving force. I know Amitabh Kant sir is very bullish about electric mobility and very forthcoming, but somewhere we are lacking in the implementation, I think, in the last few months, maybe because of COVID, priorities have shifted, but let's get back together and draft a new way forward. So I thank Niti Aayog, but I think there's a lot more to be done.
Well, Shulaja, you have taken the words out of my mouth. Very
That's why
boldly,
you put me on the spot.
very clearly, all we are expecting is from backseat driving, Niti Aayog should take steering wheel in the hand. And the learning for Jasmine here is, or the Delhi government is, that there is a case here. Good intentions, very good discussions, very good steps. Somewhere we lost the way. Because Niti Aayog lost in touch with OEMs, OEMs lost touch with DHI and Niti Aayog. So for the daily belief, Jasmine, you are a great guy and you have been so much in touch. Please continue to be in very, very close touch on the ground, on the micro steps, that has the policy resulted into the things that we wanted on a quarterly basis or a 6 monthly basis, rather than on a 2 or a year, 3 years basis. For example, the figures at present in Delhi are so low of the things that you are trying to promote. And if you want 5 lakh vehicles in 5 years, you need to, like we, not you, we all need to jump start today. And we don't need to talk of next year, but we have to talk of next month. From just less than 3,000, 4,000 vehicles per month, which are subsidized in Delhi, we have to talk of something like 15,000, 20,000 being promoted in Delhi, and also industry to take its part in that. So from industry perspective, I want to come to Kannan now. Bosch, a big name, especially in my international business. Wherever we do our electric pedelecs, we enter any of the superstores and try to look at a bike, electric cycle today. There are thousands of them in independent bike depots there, IBDs they call them. And what sells is just Bosch powertrain and not the brands there. So everything is Bosch, 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 Bosch. Great contribution to the growth of electric cycles, but very successfully demolishing the big names and brands and bringing Bosch there in the minds of people. So my question to you is, e-cycles to a certain extent within a price bracket in Europe and US, because of Bosch, have become a commodity product. There is no differentiation between one cycle to another cycle in the powertrain in that price brand. And in automotive space, everybody looks for a differentiation, technological edge. Like in Hero Moto, in Yamaha, and everybody, we research, keep on researching, and in electric also, what next? What is the technological differentiator? So do you think India will go the same way because you have such big plans for two-wheelers, especially in India, and also other technologies, that in few years from now, because of Bosch particularly, and such like organization, technology will not be such a great differentiator. It will become a leveler. So OEMs like us will have to look for something else outside the engine or powertrain to offer to a customer a specific differentiated choice. So is it sort of a strategy of Bosch? Is it okay to go about? Are we happy with this type of a situation? Or is it worth discussing what should be the strategy of Bosch in India, and which way are you thinking of going about? Over to Kannan.
Thank you, Mr. So I hope I'm audible.
Yep.
So you're perfectly right. Pedelecs has been an unprecedented success for Bosch, and it's been for multiple reasons. It's sort of given a new way of life for students, elders, and families, and it has sort of become like more of a product which gives them pleasure and more of an experience. Given the different varieties of the pedelecs, and with the system offering that Bosch has, it sort of gained a lot of traction and sort of gained a little leadership position. So also in that perspective, as you rightly said, different OEMs themselves, like the premium OEMs like Audis or Porsches, or even GMs or Fords, are trying to get into the bike segment. So if you look at the India story in specific, so India is a great country, and the only place where you have so many segmentation of mobility solutions. So we have two-wheelers, we have three-wheelers, rickshaws, four-wheelers, commercial vehicles, light commercial vehicles. And in two-wheelers itself, we have huge segmentation of power classes, of mass market, and high power performance, and so on. And on top of that, we have specific segments which cater to fleets. So when we talk about technology, I'll just try to delineate two different aspects. So one is the energy storage part of it, which seems to be the prime mover for electrification. The second thing is the powertrain part of it, which is the motors and the power electronics. And all of us know that the differentiation lies both in terms of what the brands want to provide as a unique selling proposition. Say, for example, the two-wheeler space in India right now is extremely clear in terms of what the brand offers. A specific brand offers a good quality as an USP. A specific brand offers a cost differentiation as a good USP. A specific brand offers high-level performance. And the same solution cannot fit all. And when we talk about differentiation in technology, so we'll talk first from the technology point of view, then we'll just interplay between technology and cost. In terms of technology, let's start with batteries, which seems to be the most debated product. And because of different geopolitical reasons and because of different reasons of investments, India currently does not have a huge play in battery as such. However, if we leave that out, we only focus on technology to provide a specific performance with the specific boundaries of a vehicle. Okay, we'll look at nickel, cobalt, aluminum, or nickel, manganese, cobalt for a battery. For a specific application, which does not care much about weight or interface, but they are okay in terms of cost or in terms of safety, we look at lithium iron phosphate. Okay, and if we look at specific quotient of cost versus performance trade-off, we could always look at nickel, manganese, cobalt, and manganese oxide. So there are different interplays of technology. But if you look at customer, the customer just looks at what is the range that the vehicle gives versus does it meet his quotient of performance or cost. So hence, what I say is there's a lot of scope for differentiation in two-wheelers itself, depending on what USPs the brands want to offer. If we look at the interplay between battery and the powertrain, in powertrain itself, we can have motors which are centrally located or which is hub, as well as specific transmission areas which like a belt-driven or a chain-driven. So depending on how mature these technologies are and how the different brands want to take it forward, there's always an interplay which can differentiate the technology. And one thing is clear, I have been a part of the CII standardization committee, international standardization committee for standardization of batteries, lithium-ion batteries from 2016 to 2018. This was in the four-wheeler space. Nobody wants to standardize. The reason being that everybody wants to have their own unique interfaces and their own unique design parameters. I do believe even in India, even in two-wheeler space, this will continue because everybody wants to differentiate their brands and experiences. However, having said this, if we look at low-speed two-wheelers, let's say, for example, if we take something less than 40 or less than 25 kmph, if together with the industry and the government, we can go for standardization of energy content as well as interfaces, then there is a possibility that purely it becomes a cost play and not a technology play. So I will leave it there. So I think you're on mute.
Thank you, Kanan. Your clear perspective. But for the OEMs or for the customers, perhaps we are heading differently from an engine which was proudly developed and produced by Yamaha or Bajaj or Hero or now Hero Electric, to an engine which is bought out at a price tag and fitted into a chassis and plastics and creating a vehicle out of it. So one has to be careful from OEM side. You may go what you do. Perhaps it's more of a warning to OEMs to be careful of how much you want to use your name versus Bosch name. That's all I was saying. Thank you. The question next to Kanan and Sulaja. because you two are on two sides, one on creating great componentry, another one is creating great vehicles. So together, you can answer this question. How long do you think should the direct incentives and mandated policies intervention should continue to set the course of an exponential growth of electric vehicles in places like Delhi? 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, or depending on the results, you keep on modulating, because government cannot endlessly do what they are doing. So what in your thinking, both of you, is the market ready? And a limited type of direct incentive and intervention is okay, or a long drawn process? So first Shulaja and then Kanan.
Okay, thanks, Soindraji. So I think that the electric vehicle industry has never asked for any incentives for itself, right? It's not that they're asking for subsidies or incentive to help in their improving their bottom line. I think the incentives have always been directed at making electric vehicles more affordable to customers and to promoting electric mobility, in India. So I think it's in the right direction. It's promoting a clean air technology and creating population. Now, why these subsidies or incentives are needed is because jo dikta hai wo bikta hai. So unless we create a population of electric vehicles in the market and it creates a positive word of mouth, the momentum required for mass deployment will not come. And then how to create a population, when the initial price tag or the sticker shock is preventing customers from adopting the new technology, which itself is new. There are many question marks about batteries and about the resale value, etc. In order to make the purchase decision in favor of EVs, I think the incentives are needed. When we arrive at a price parity situation, or when there are enough electric vehicles on the road, that the word of mouth is now creating momentum, I think that's when maybe the incentives may not be required for the customers. Now you ask me when the time frame would come. It's only my estimate, but I think that when the battery prices come down somewhere below $150 per kilowatt hour. Today we are buying batteries now at around $190 per kilowatt hour. It's down from 800 or 900, and it was as high as 250 a year ago. So we are now at around 190, 195, $200. But when we are somewhere between $100 and $150 per kilowatt hour for batteries, I think that's when the sticker shock, at least for the small vehicles, 2 or 3 wheelers, will probably reduce to a very great extent. Now, when I, for example, talk about customers, let's say 2-wheeler customers, right? They want everything. They want high performance, good speed, comfort, styling. They want, a lot of range, but the price should not be higher than the ICE vehicle. So this is a very difficult task because you're giving an electric vehicle with 3 years battery loaded onto it, which is like 3 years fuel, but they're still expecting price parity. So to meet this kind of a mindset, I would say mind block almost. I think the subsidies are required till we are able to bring electric vehicles of equivalent performance at maybe a 10% premium or a 10-12% price premium, but not a 50% price premium. So I think in my estimate, this point will come in another 2-3 years. Both population of vehicles will increase, awareness will increase, and the battery prices will further come down. At which point I think there will be a massive acceleration of electric vehicle deployment of 2 and 3 wheelers without any kind of direct incentive. This is my estimate. And I think in this time, we can also look at getting the charging and swapping infrastructure in place in many places, which will also further help in creating this population. So again, jo dikta hai wo bikta hai. So we have to all focus in the next 3 years to use the policy framework available to create population of electric vehicles and the demand required.
Kanan, any comments?
Sure. I think Sulaja hit the nail on the head. So I just like to add a little bit more on that. So most important thing is right now we are in the right space of incentivization, not only on the technology side, on the infrastructure side, also on the training side, which means it's important for people to also know how it operates and how they service these vehicles. Having said this, right now we are having more and more brands and OEMs coming up with offerings. And in the next 3 years, it is practical to say that people and the brands and the OEMs will know which is the right way to go. Because over the next 2-3 years is when the adoption will start to scale up, and they will also learn and they will also pivot. And since the development cycle typically is between 12 months to 24 months or so, it definitely would take practically at least 2 to 2.5 years, even for an industry to gain confidence in order to scale up. And from a policy point of view, the first 3 years is very critical to ensure that the industry and the customers focus on technology and cost, whereas they don't have to worry about excess cost, which is subsidized by the government. But after that, it also needs 3 more years to sustain that momentum. So in my opinion, we need 3 years of intervention to provide the initial thrust, and then 3 more years of additional momentum to sustain the thrust, so that everybody can pivot, and then we have a proper standardized platform or a technology which takes momentum, and people also gain more trust. And this is how it should be. I leave it to you guys.
Thank you, Kanan and Shailaja. Yes, great views. And just to take a pit spot, because we have a luxury of 5 minutes with us, having started early also, let me just try and put a summary into whatever we have discussed before we take questions from the audience, which are already there. Till now, I think what we have sort of discussed and reached a conclusion is a policy like Delhi is a great policy. So to happen, there has to be a lot of work before that. So any such policy that happens in future or otherwise gets amended has to have a lot of legwork, a lot of involvement, a lot of integration effort of all stakeholders is one learning. Second is great policy itself is half job done. And we have seen it in FAME too. To a large extent, it was a great policy, but it lost its way midway, which means continuing the policy implementation, like Shailaja was saying, is so very important from point of view of getting to know what is happening onto the ground at a micro level and do those corrections. If you are launching a rocket to the moon, you have to have side thrust rockets to course correct. If you don't course correct, you will end up not even in moon or Mars, you will end up lost in space. And that's what's happening to most of our policies. So course correction is so very important, and course correction happens only once you know what's happening on the ground. And that's why any policymaker and the stakeholders have to have their ears to the ground to keep on course correcting of whatever was intended cause and what's the result of that and what more needs to be done, maybe not financially, but otherwise, mandating or so. So that is the second point. Third is, perhaps Niti Aayog has cleared or vacated the pedestal of being, on our perception basis, being end all of a big, good, great conduit between the helm of office of Prime Minister and others. So perhaps democratically speaking, OEMs and stakeholders have to gather everybody into the game and collectively think of pushing the right agencies, the government, municipalities, rather than believing that one person will be coordinating on our behalf. And the last bit is, jo dikhta hai, wo bikta hai. And that's one sentence one has to keep in mind, that unless in a place like Delhi or in India, in a closer space, in a closer density, we have a very high visibility of vehicles, whether it is 2-wheelers, 3-wheelers or cars, it won't go into an exponential growth. So the first and foremost thing is how to create enough numbers of vehicles to be visible with a word of mouth, whether it is positive or negative, but at least there is an opinion there on the road, and that carries word to others, 10 others. Because in India, very few people would buy vehicles online or just initially, but they will look for opinions from others. So the most important part is jo dikhta hai, bikta hai. We have to have enough vehicles. For example, Delhi can have a target of 500,000 vehicles, maybe in 2 or 3 years' time, and thereafter leave it. It'll take off. But if somehow we delay it and 500,000 comes in 6 years, 7 years, we will lose it. So the thing is speed, acceleration, quick actions to put that huge number of vehicles onto the road. So these are the few things perhaps we have reached now. Excuse me. Yeah. Like we have few minutes left and there are some questions, and perhaps I would read the gist of those and maybe the panel can comment over here. The first question is about, what about e-cycles? Should they not be promoted? To a certain extent, this was covered and asked as a question. Maybe Jasmine can comment on it, about why e-cycles are left out.
So it's a very valid question. And I must say that almost 3 years back when the work on Delhi EV policy started, I don't remember any e-cycle models being around in the market. And I believe in the last 1 year especially, we're talking about double-digit actual sales figures in Delhi as far as e-cycles is concerned. So the market segment itself was very small. The offerings were very few, but the ray of hope that I see is that during this COVID, the cycling behavior has actually taken off. And to the extent that there are adequate models in the market, I see more and more OEMs actually bringing out good models. And the prices also, because what a government support to a segment cannot change the large reality. If there's a huge variance between the consumer expectation and what the OEMs are offering, then government cannot completely sort of bridge that gap. But I do see that e-cycles is a very promising segment. And on behalf of Delhi government, this is something that we are very keen to find a way in which e-cycles can also be promoted.
Well, it's a good news, because if you put e-cycles, the low-speed scooters will obviously fall behind that, and you will include that also. So great. We hope to hear this from you very soon.
Various. Hello.
Right. Tell me, please.
Yes. Sorry. So I think the connection was broken. But just one more remark which I wanted to make, which is, as a government, and I remarked earlier that there are various aspects of the policy that we have drafted. And you said 50% is the job of the policy. I would say it's 10%. The 90% work is the implementation. And one big gap that we currently see is that irrespective of what policy we put down, there is hardly any talk or awareness that we see manufacturers taking initiatives or more aggressive initiatives to promote that awareness in the market, because all policies will work out to nothing if the consumer awareness is very low. And today, if I take today's papers or yesterday's papers, we are approaching the Diwali season. All that we see advertisements of is ICE vehicles. So tell me, where is it that the consumers are not going to go by themselves to website and surf? That is the core 0.2% segment of people who are already sold onto electric vehicles. Where is this mass awareness of EVs going to come from? And therefore, I urge all the OEMs that, given that Delhi has set up this kind of a policy framework in place, we promise that the implementation will be as smooth. And we have made note of all the points Mr. Gill has mentioned. You will soon hear about this dialogue platform between the government, a more regular interaction between the government and other stakeholders. But I think amount of work that is required to be done on promoting consumer awareness, and I think that is one important message that I would like to leave this group.
Yeah, Justin, agreed. But you are pointing your fingers at some of the people sitting here who are bleeding for last 7-8 years heavily on oxygen with very limited budgets. Oh, that's besides. But more important is, when I speak, when Suruja speaks, it's taken like a marketing talk. When we speak from the policy front, from the government, for example, Swachh Bharat campaign is so successful. Why? Because government is speaking. So I would rather join hands with Delhi government to let government speak about awareness than me speaking about awareness. I'll be just advertising, not speaking about awareness and education. So fine, great idea. Let's get together. Let's pool our thoughts together and resources together to speak that electric mobility जेब के लिए अच्छी, दिल्ली के लिए अच्छी, देश के लिए अच्छी, environment के लिए अच्छी. That will make a lot of sense. If I put it in my ad sentence, it will be taken, अरे बोल रहा है, हीरो वाला बोल रहा है, अपनी गाड़ी बेच रहा है. Great. And secondly, yes, policy may be 10%, but policy makers have to be 50% part of it, which you are already saying, that there will be a platform where we can exchange views. I firmly believe the way professionally this policy has been made out, there will be many things to come. We will be interacting and course correcting. Thank you. Another question, which is two small questions, and maybe I'll take liberty to answer because we are almost overshooting the time, is one is, can we move out? When can we move out of China? Well, dear, we are already moving out of China in a big way for two reasons. One is because of the sentiments of the country, and second is people like Bosch coming up with good componentry. And as Kannan was saying, and we are saying, that 50% of the vehicle is not made inside, it is bought out from somewhere. So if more people like Bosch create those good componentry and they will have to be pushed like OEMs to create those capacities. Surely we'll be accelerating the localization. And the last bit of the question is, can there be enough EV chargers on petrol pumps so that we can just wait comfortably at the, like we are filling petrol, we can fill EV chargers? Very difficult, very long-term thinking, because even if you have charging stations at petrol pump, one is the parking problems or hazards, etc. But it will be an opportunity charging till you have batteries which can be quick charged. So you can't wait more than 5 minutes on a petrol pump. And in a 5 minutes, you will get what? You will get 5% of the charge or so. So opportunity charging can be done on the road, but complete charging cannot be done on such places which are always full of traffic. There have to be solution. And like in the earlier, Naveen was saying, OEMs are finding their own solution. Like all two-wheelers which are being sold, manufactured by Hero, for example, and so many others, have portable, lightweight batteries. You just take it out, put it in a plug by side of your table or wherever you are going, and it gets charged in whatever 1, 2, 3 hours or half an hour if you want to quickly go away. So the solutions have to be somewhere else, not really putting inside the petrol pump charging station, except opportunity charging. So we have overshot, but I think we have done justice to the subject and we have covered what was supposed to be covered. And I believe that we have, in the end, reached some solutions and reached some opinions which are congregating towards a common cause. And I believe here on, we ourselves and so many other stakeholders will continue to be on such platforms along with the government policymakers and great guys like Jasmine to spearhead these type of initiatives ahead and take this country, particularly Delhi, to set an example for others to follow. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Jasmine ji. Thank you, Abhishek ji. Thank you, Soinder.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. And can I request panelists for the next session to be there, please? Thank you. Jeffrey, are you there?
Yeah, hi, I'm here. Hello.
Hi, Jeffrey.
Can
We
you
are
hear me?
ahead of time. So I'll do one thing. I'll just share the screen and then the report that KPMG has prepared. So you can brief a bit about, and then the audience and the spectator, the
I think
panelists.
we have everybody right already. Who's left?
Morning, everyone. Abhishek here.
Abhishek.
So Jeffrey, would you like to just give some inputs? Or
Yeah, so maybe I'll just spend a minute or so talking about this before we get on to the main discussion. So essentially, this is a knowledge paper that we have launched today on the occasion of this conference. What you're talking about here primarily is in the appendix, you'll also find a lot of analysis on the various policies by the various states to promote EV. But essentially, the idea here is looking at all of these and international benchmarks and seeing at how do we have an enabling policy framework for EV adoption, what do we look at, and the focus is here is largely on the two-wheeler and three-wheeler ecosystem, because that's what is more critical also for a country like India. Now, passenger cars especially is a little more into the future, but even for passenger it's two-wheelers, it's three-wheelers, and then for the car segment it'll largely be on the fleet side. and then the public transportation side, where we will see a lot of traction going forward. So this primarily talks about the ecosystem, the policy frameworks which are needed, what are the kind of incentives, structures, how has the FAME policy, what are the various options available in it, what are the states talking about, and secondly, how do we ensure that we can supercharge the growth of EV in this country. We also looked at several, the growth path of EVs. Again, of course, it is very well known that in almost all countries globally, there have been a mix of subsidies, whether it is demand side or supply side, to actually propel EV. And once you come to a certain stage where you have enough infrastructure, where you have all of the network and enough vehicles on the road, then you can start looking at it becoming more self-fulfilling. So that's the coverage, and also looking at the various models which are there, various innovative models which have worked, whether it's for delivery, whether it's for fleet movement, whether it's for passenger cars, and the EV play, essentially what are the opportunities that may be there in B2B. So that's the ideal, the idea of this knowledge paper. Also, with the propagation of EVs, there is also one more challenge which will happen, and that's a lot to do with the auto component manufacturers. Auto component manufacturers today, and India in itself has made a name as an exporter and really good quality components, but most of them focused on ICE engines, transmissions, the powertrain. We are amongst the chosen destinations in the world. Now, when this shifts, not only in India, but also globally, that's going to have a significant impact on the workforce, on the small tier 2, tier 3 suppliers also. So what are the areas that they can get into? What are the areas that make sense for them? Because like we mentioned in the previous panel, like it or not, the EV play is here. It's only a matter of time. It's a matter of when is it going to be 5%, 10%, 20%. It's not a matter of if at all. So in which case you will have to be there. We will have to get into the supply chain, whether it's for domestic or for global companies. So that's the overall context of the document. And we've been also analyzing in the appendix. We'll find the various policies by the different states. Some have demand side incentives, some may have supply side incentives, some may have a mix of both. Delhi is one which has recently come up with its policy, which also has been fairly well appreciated. So that's the overall context. Yeah.
Jeffrey, we have all the panelists here. We are good to go.
Okay, all right.
Hi, Jeffrey. Hi, Vishal. Sharif this side. Can we just quickly check my voice if it's okay?
Yeah, Sharif, right? Yeah, your voice is fine.
Great. Am I allowed to present? I'm not too sure on that. If yes, then I'll be happy to kind of check that as well.
Okay, so maybe what we will do is maybe once introduction, maybe you can then present a couple of slides if you can share it on this platform. I don't know if you have that sharing facility on right now.
Yes, it is.
Share screen, right? Okay, fine. So then we'll start, and then probably we can start off with you. In fact, I'll probably ask Abhishek a couple of questions first, because he needs to leave soon as well. And after that, we can have the presentation from you. Yeah,
sure. I'll just quickly check if it's visible to everyone. Can you just give a thumbs up? Yes. Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll start. Right.
We're good to go.
Okay, great, fine. So good morning, everyone, and a hearty welcome to all my fellow panelists today. So today we have a very distinguished and very, very diverse set of industry leaders. There are people from the OEM side, there are people from utility, from TERI, and also from financial organizations. So all of them will be very useful today to share their insights on this very relevant topic in today's times. So while public transportation is a main area of discussion and a main area of vehicular pollution today, as is always being talked about in the media, and the governments in both center and the states, various states are doing their best to try to move to better emission norms, or at least, if not EV, at least make some steps towards that direction. But one of the major areas which is not talked about so much also is non-public transportation, because a significant amount of passenger movement today happens also in fleet, in bike taxis, in three-wheelers, etc. And essentially in some states, we also have private buses running, right? So there's a lot of non-public transportation, which is used for shorter hauls also and point-to-point travel. The transition and use of EV for this non-public transport mode, if you may call it that way, will therefore undoubtedly have a lot of significant positive effects, whether it's environmental, economic, or public welfare. So from an operational point of view, as everyone knows, EVs do not have transmissions, do not have cooling systems, resulting in lower maintenance costs, yet end of the day, people look at it as an expensive option.
Yeah, Zephyr, looks like those network challenges.
Yeah, some signal issues. So Abhishek, would you like to give a small intro about BACS and about the EV thing that you guys are doing?
Sure, Vishal. Am I audible, Vishal? Am I audible, everyone?
Yes, yeah. Please.
Good noon. It's exactly 12 o'clock as by my watch. Good noon to everybody, and I'm thrilled to be a part of the Delhi EV Summit. I was just listening to the previous session where CEO Hero Electric was speaking about what to make and what to do to make EVs visible. Well, exactly, that's what we are trying to do here in Delhi. My name is Abhishek Ranjan. I'm working with a power distribution utility, which is named as BACS Rajdhani Power Limited. We are the largest utility in the city of Delhi, serving over 750 square kilometers and about 2.6 million metered connections. Now, we believe firmly that the distributed energy resources are the way to go, and they're obviously coming in. And EV, we consider it as one of the very important distributed energy resources. So this is just not another kind of load for me, just not another metered connection for me. Like somebody is coming to me to get a metered connection for 10 kilowatt or 20 kilowatt, something like that. So therefore, we attach a lot of importance to the electric vehicle. Since the past 2 years, we have seen a lot of activity right from the Government of India, the Central Electricity Authority, constituting the committees. I think that was first in January 2018 when they constituted technical committees and the policy committees to look into respectively the technical aspects of the charging infra, of which I was fortunate to be a part of it. And then the other was the regulatory and the policy initiatives. And since then, India has not looked back. FAME 1, FAME 2 guidelines from the MOP Government of India twice, that too, I mean, last one was in October. And then our own Delhi state EV policy, which was announced last year. And then this year, very recently, we had an elaborate policy and laying a lot of emphasis on the private, public, and home charging programs, and also some of those rebate programs through DISCOMs or distribution utilities like us. Now, what we have done, corporate adoption of e-mobility, that is number one. So what we have done is we have voluntarily taken the membership of EV100, that's the Climate Group initiative, the global initiative. And in a phased manner, we are transitioning to the electric vehicle platform. Since October 2018, we had inducted 9 four-wheelers into our fleet. And this year in August, we have inducted, I think, 12 two-wheelers and loaders also, I mean, three-wheeler loaders. So what we are saying is in every aspect of the operations that we do, right, from the transport of our officers to the linemen to the field staff, everywhere we are now touching in every aspect of it, and there is no looking back. That is number one. We have our own captive charging stations across our vital grid locations and our corporate offices as well for our own vehicles. Apart from that, we have also tied up with various agencies like ESL, landowning agencies like Municipal Corporation of Delhi, even agencies like Rajasthan Electronics India Limited, REIL, other providers like fleet operators like Blue Smart or Ola, you name them. I mean, so we have tried, even the Common Services Center, CSC platform of the Government of India. So we have tried to create an ecosystem where we play a pivotal role in enabling access to electricity, which is very competitive in terms of, because there is a backend infra cost as well. B, doing active studies with these fleet operators to find out which is the area where the, if electric charging station comes in, the utility or the utilization is very, very high. And that is how we partnered with ESL and Blue Smart. And there are several public charging stations, DC01, operating in our area. And there is no looking back from that. Next is now we are very focused on two-wheeler and three-wheeler charging, because they are the major ones. Three-wheeler, in fact, is already there. We did a study, and that was released, and the report was released, I think, around 2 weeks back, about what is the take of the different stakeholders in the whole story. And then we found out that the two-wheelers and three-wheelers are the ones to be electrified in a major way. We have almost over 1,000 points in our DISCOM area, where three-wheelers are getting charged through metered connection. Now we are trying to put in place battery swappers with the help of our partners, and also the low-cost charger. So there are 3 or 4 aspects together with the Delhi Dialogue Commission we are trying to put in place: curbside charging and parking, which is going to be one of the most widespread way of doing it, low voltage and low wattage EV charging, which is going to be very widespread for 2 and 3 wheelers, even for 4 wheelers. And we believe, as per the findings of the study, why don't we enable low voltage and low wattage charging, home charging, overnight charging? And for that, we have also kindly requested our honorable regulators also to give, for example, separate EV connection in the existing, say, household or an industry or commercial CNI consumers, etc., through a hardwired EV charger to prevent misuse. TOD, TOU rates for electric vehicle connections round the clock and round the year. So, and then we have tied up with providers like Hero Electric, from whom we purchased 12 scooters and more to come. Lohia, for example. There are many other players in the market, and I'm forgetting the names actually. So there is an ecosystem awareness. The role that we see in ourselves is about creating the ecosystem environment. Second is awareness among the public. As Mr. Gill was saying in the earlier session, that people dikhta hai wo bikta. That means people have to see something to believe, and that's what we did when we started in October 18. If you see our vehicles, we have all the posters and stickers around the vehicle to educate people, and that had a dramatic effect. So, and the next coming forward, what we are trying to do is we are trying to create a online map interactive repository, wherein we'll try to figure out on the basis, on the lines of what they are doing in, say, California or United States, some of the utilities, interactive areas where how much juice is available in the network. So that should also help the government in quick planning the low-hanging fruits, wherein these public charging infrastructure can put in place. We are also trying to optimize on the network cost. Why? Because we have found out through the study that the evening charging is going to be rampant if unmanaged, and that is going to overload already over. Of the network cost is also very, very important. So these are the aspects for which we have also advocated and requested our regulator for enabling the concept of managed charging as a part of the regulation, the supply code regulation. So I'm very hopeful, and I'm aware of the government of Delhi's intent to put in place 200 locations immediately, and we are glad and proud to be a part of the initiative, and looking forward to actively contributing. Over to you. Thank you.
Yeah, hi. Sorry, I had some connectivity issues. So maybe I'll just ask you one more to elaborate.
Sorry, I missed your question, Jeffrey. If you can please repeat. It seems like video is hung.
Is essentially also, as you mentioned, utility companies. Some of the additional best practices, California always, as you mentioned. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was saying that undoubtedly utilities have a very important role to play, especially in democratizing the charging, and also there is enough setup everywhere. Now, California is always talked about as best practices, and some of the US and European models are talked about in the way that various charging infrastructure and ecosystem setups have happened. But the environment there, the kind of, let's say, even the density, all of those are very, very different from what we find in a Delhi or a Mumbai kind of a very crowded agglomeration, especially in the urban centers. So what are some of the other best practices that you think that we can leverage here particularly from charging infrastructure and ecosystem setup, where in many places you don't even really have to set up a charging infrastructure, say even for private.
Sure. Can I respond to the question, please? I think
Jeffrey, you remove your video because your internet is
those
very
which came up later.
patchy. If you speak only might be okay because your video is taking too much bandwidth.
Let me. Can you hear me better now?
Yes. Yeah, it is better. Please repeat your last point, sir.
Yeah, so I was saying, so there are many nuances which will be relevant for India, especially because we don't have the kind of space and the kind of about in many of these Eastern countries.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, the situation in the ecosystem in India is pretty different from the Western world. And that is what I mentioned.
Which we can use in the Indian context.
Yeah, sure. I got your sense. I got your question. So yes, you are very much right that the environment, the ecosystem there in the Western world is quite different from here. A, population density, B, the lack of space, C, the nature of the vehicles are also very, very different. D, also the behavior, the habitual habits of the people in terms of the mobility is also very different. Okay. Now, all these four aspects we try to understand through the study that we did over the past 1 year, and which is captured in the report format on our website also. Now, to answer your query, yes, there are few things which can be adopted there straight away. For example, the utility can take lead in installing public charging stations in the areas wherein it is much desired, but might not be very lucrative for the private CPOs to come in. And that is in Californian language, they call it disadvantaged areas or sections, which is also approved by the CPUC, their regulator. In our case, for example, SCRC is over here. Now, the second, what we have focused more on is light electric vehicle AC and DC charging and curbside or bayside parking and charging. This is very unique to our country, our India. In Delhi also, for example, if you find out the parking lots, they're very, very crowded. And the number of two-wheelers and three-wheelers are very huge compared to four-wheelers. So specifically catering to that segment, how can you come up with, so for example, there is a Ubutricity model wherein the smart poles based charging, that is also we are trying to pilot. B is it should not be like a size of a petrol vending machine, that size of the charger. It could be a wall mount charger, light electric vehicle, maybe 3.3 kilowatt or up to 7 kilowatt, which is also good on the health of the distribution network. Not much augmentation will be required, thereby a relief to the consumer in terms of the tariff, no tariff escalation. B, due to the arbitrage opportunity existing in the grid because of the weather, nature of the weather, for example, in Delhi continental climate, there is a huge diurnal variation in the asset loading. Peak and off peak loading, there is a 50% of the gap as compared to the peak and off peak. So why can't we leverage that and utilize the current asset only to charge these 2 and 3 wheelers, because they're all, I mean, a two-wheeler, the size of battery they have, maybe 1.5 kilowatt load. Three-wheeler, maybe they can be charged at 3.5 kilowatt load. So that kind of charging infrastructure and standards we are trying to together develop with Bureau of Indian Standards and DST. And I am glad that they have also agreed to work in tandem with Delhi Dialogue Commission and Dialogue and Development Commission very recently. So to that extent, we are going to have that nuances and those kind of charges available. That is typically for Indian scenario. And space, as you know, Jeffrey, you mentioned that space is also a challenge over here. So upgrading the distribution infra just for those 3 or 4 hours of evening charging is a problem. So therefore, we need to have overnight or off-peak charging, and that too coupled with the say off-grid or distributed energy resource or solar-powered charging. So these are some of the nuances we are trying to work on, Jeffrey.
Jeffrey, I think you said that Mr. Abhishek will be leaving early. If so, I have a quick one for him before he leaves. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's fine. Sure, go ahead.
So Abhishek, this is R.K. Mishra. You might have seen those blue Yulu bikes in Delhi.
Yeah, good afternoon, sir. Yeah, I have seen them.
Yeah. So by the way, we are the largest EV people in India. We have more than 10,000 bikes across the country. Bangalore has highest. As an utility, see, if I have a car, I'm not going to dump my car and buy another electric car unless ESL gives me free. I'm a government officer, which of course sort of keeps telling me nobody's buying. If government is making infrastructure for four-wheeler for private use, I think it's a waste, because I charge my car in my home in the night, which will go 250 kilometers, or I will my commute is 100 kilometers. So I'm not going to use it. Yes, taxi wala will create a shed of his own, like in Bangalore, Bhagirathi has done it, and they will do it. What you as a public utility should focus on, electric utility should focus on, create the base. For example, our charging box is like a refrigerator, which can charge 12 batteries at a time in 3 shifts, 36 batteries. Now, we are putting into some mom and pop stores or kirana stores and all that risks of that. I mean, every corner you have an office. Give us a place. We just need a 15 ampere plug. We'll put one of our boxes, 36 batteries charged. You get the money, we get charged, and we all are happy. Rather than creating this huge, and by the way, individual two-wheeler and three-wheeler, he'll charge at home only. Three-wheeler charging at your station for 2 hours, his business is gone. So I think we have to be very clear what we are trying to do. We are not Europe. By creating a curbside, one guy comes and parks his diesel car. You can't remove it so the electric car can be parked there. Correct? So this is something we have to be very practical of what our country is needed, and fleet operators are the first adopters, whether it is four-wheeler or two-wheelers, and people who are augmenting public services like public transport, first and last mile connectivity, like Yulu and somebody else might be doing. I think focus anyway. I'll have our folks reach out to you in Delhi. Please talk to them and see if something, because your offices could be the first places where we just need a refrigerator size, 2-3 boxes, and life gets going. Of course, all ESL. Discuss with Saurabh, who happens to be my junior. We putting at all ESL stations, but there we have to create one dabba. We have to create a roof on top of it, and then SDMC will come. I mean, God knows. So Jasmine also has spoken to. Ideas and policies are there. Correct. We wrote the first EV policy in Karnataka. I also happened to advise some government agencies. I think let's put on some practical. As somebody you rightly said, जो दिखता है वो बिकता है. आपके यहाँ लगा देंगे तो और लोग भी मांगेंगे. I think we should.
I agree with you. I mean, one of the things is swapping batteries. So they are already there, as you said. One box refrigerator, there are multiple. Last year, I happened to visit Ola facility in Gurgaon, and now I am very happy to tell you that Sun Mobility has put up so many dabbas in our areas also. They are all operational for e-rickshaw swapping and all. Yeah. This is one of the areas where we need to look in, where for two-wheelers and three-wheelers, this is possible.
Yes.
So definitely, yes, a network of this is required. Definitely, yes.
So we'll reach out to you. Let's see how it goes.
Sure,
right.
Sure.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Mishra. So maybe I'll ask you the next question before I go to Sharif. So as you mentioned earlier, Yulu today is a leading shared e-mobility service provider, primarily using electric two-wheelers, and has presence across many cities, right? Even beyond Bangalore today. And you are trying to integrate urban e-mobility solutions together also with public transport. Yeah. As a result, there's a lot of engagement that you have with stakeholders in the city, state, and central governments, whether it is towards having sustainable mobility policies on public bike sharing or electric mobility. So in your view, what has been the response and what should be the focus of the adoption of EV in India? As you mentioned, I completely agree with you that subsidizing me or you for our private cars is not the maximum value for buck. No. For the buck, two ways. One is the charging itself is a different issue. I mean, each one of us will have to have our own parking spots and charging there. And secondly, we might go 20 to 100 kilometers at max in a day. Right, so that doesn't really address the full issue also, which is of vehicular pollution, which is the biggest constraint which has come in, or of the import of petroleum. So in your case, what's the focus areas for the government to actually promote the largest and fastest adoptions for EV in India?
So it's very simple. I think it was very good that charging infrastructure to me right now is a problem, but it's not the biggest problem. The government FAME 1 was fine because where they included even these two-wheelers and low-speed two-wheelers, which potentially could become the fleets as a subsidy. For whatever reason, I think somebody decided, and I think maybe the OEMs might have gone and lobbied, because all OEMs were trying to make 1 lakh plus scooters, or now even lesser. They thought individuals will go and buy them. Unfortunately, I'm not going to throw my Hero Honda or Honda Activa and buy a new one unless I have to, because these are used by the people who are very sensitive to the price. So I think it was a wrong policy. Of course, now we have reached out to Niti. We have reached out to Mr. Mathur, who happens to be very, very positive about it. So government needs to realize who is the first user of EV. I think to me, fleet operators are the first ones, and they can buy in bulk. If Yulu with his own money, equity money, we have bought 10,000 vehicles. And by the way, nobody makes those vehicles in India, unfortunately. OEMs are making something which is not selling, and what is selling they are not making. So that's number one. And of course, Heroes and Bajaj. Now, of course, Yulu has a Bajaj as a strategic partner. Bajaj is actively doing it. So one is that. Second, government needs to potentially giving me who can buy a 20 lakh car, 5 lakh as subsidy is a waste. I think it's a waste of national resource. It should be given with that 5 lakh subsidy, 20 Yulu can be subsidized to 10, 20, 30%. Or that kind of size, I am telling. Third, this, by the way, what is public bike sharing? So public transport, you rightly said, is metros and buses. But what happens, by the way, in Tokyo and Hong Kong, there are 22,000 passengers per hour. Delhi has only 9,000. Doesn't mean our trains are any less or population is less, because people are not able to reach metro station easily to be able to use them because density is very low. Tokyo, you have every 500 meter or 1 kilometer metro station. Delhi may not be that situation, at least right now. So you first and last mile connectivity will also attribute and add to the public transport. And only way to reduce pollution is by more use of public transport, which is usually, mass rapid transit. And when the buses, Delhi has CNG and hopefully electric soon. So first and last mile connectivity and fleet. For example, why can't government mandate that every Ola and Uber over 10 years, every car has to be, electric, but every year 10% you change. How about the school buses? Bangalore alone has 13,000 school buses and BMTC has only 6,000 buses. Why can't they say the school, and schools have space to park them? School buses run only 30 kilometers. So they can have a very small battery, correct? So the faster adoption will happen. Fleet operators, likes of the Ulus and Olas and Ubers, mandate it. Ola and Uber, 10% of your fleet has to be electric. Incentivize these, micro mobility like Ulu for the first and last mile connectivity. Make the school buses, which are one of the biggest, and they run only 30-40 kilometers, have a place to park. Schools have big connections. Charging is not a problem, and battery doesn't have to be like a 250 kilometer distance battery. It can be only 50 kilometer. Small battery, low cost. These are the three things which are of course given to Mahua, given to Niti Aayog, and also given to Mr. Gadkari's ministry. These need to be done for fast, that only that's how China started. China started this way only. First they went for the public transport, their buses and all, and then they promoted the small vehicles, which are used for not personal use, but used for public use in terms of delivery, in terms of these kind of first and last mile connectivity. And I think India can simply follow that playbook and go ahead. I don't think India, you will have 3 million electric cars selling in a hurry. Nor these 1 lakh rupee scooters, you'll not have millions of them being bought. Chetak from Bajaj is an example. Ather has brought something, that's an example. And three-wheelers, you have mandatory policy of permits. In Bangalore, we have stopped no more, petrol scooters. 2 3-wheelers, no license will be given. But if you have electric, 50,000 licenses are available for free. So those are the kind of policies. I've also met Jasmine, explained to them. Delhi is a very complicated because 3-4 governments run Delhi. But I'm sure Delhi can come together and do this.
Right. So thanks for that. And maybe I'll move on to Sharif. Now, Sharif, you have been working significantly also in the area of commercial vehicles for EV and also on FAME too. So maybe if you want to share your presentation first, we could start with that.
So thanks, Jeffrey, and thanks to CII for giving this opportunity. I hope that the presentation is visible.
Yes, it is.
So I'll just give a brief background of what we do and then move on to the presentation. Picking up some of the points from Mr. Mishra as well as Mr. Abhishek, who spoke previously. So I'm Sharif Kabar. I'm Associate Fellow and Area Convener at Center for Sustainable Mobility in TERI. We have been engaged in a lot of work related to electric vehicles, primarily on the commercial side, as well as on the public transportation and 2-wheeler and 3-wheeler side. I'm leaving out 4-wheeler, so that is one area that we have not been engaged much. So in the commercial side, we are doing a study, and the report is expected to be launched next month, hopefully, where we covered Delhi, Bangalore, and Surat as key states, covering 5 case studies there. In Delhi, we studied about the unorganized movement or the sector in the movement of vegetables and fruits in Delhi from key mandis like Azadpur and Okla. We did a survey there, and we have finding on that, and will be published in the report. In Bangalore, we studied the organized sector in terms of the e-commerce industry and the organized logistics service providers, as well as the India Post, which delivers letters and parcels to the people. In Surat, we understood the movement pattern of the solid waste management services, as well as the textile movement within the city boundary. So with that, that is on the commercial side. We are currently modeling electricity load curve for Delhi when and when electric vehicles kind of come into the picture. So what is the projections around that? We are doing that. In the three-wheeler sector, as slightly touched by Mr. Mishra, we did a study on the three-wheeler on Nama Auto in Bangalore, and we did a pilot study on retrofitted electric three-wheelers in Chennai, where we deployed 10 or 12 electric three-wheelers, and that report is published and is available as well for the benefit of the audience. On the two-wheeler side, we did a study on the taxis front. So these are some of the segments where, as Mr. Mishra mentioned, these are primarily the fleet owners side or the non-public transportation side work that we have been engaged in. And there is also, I mean, there is a belief from our side also that these are some of the areas where there is a silent revolution happening in terms of electric vehicles. While we are talking about that, I just wanted to keep certain things in perspective. And coming back to the slide, where we see that the growth of registered vehicles in India has kind of zoomed from 128 million in 2010 to 253 million in 2017. And if you look into the share, the devil lies in the detail here. The bus segment, which is a minute segment in this, I'm not sure if you're able to see it. It accounts for about 0.7% of the total registered vehicles. So that is a very, and the share is declining. So what we need right now is more of buses and not just electric buses, so to say. So this was about that slide. So the next slide basically talks about, the convergence of objectives both from the government as well as the market. We have seen in the FAME subsidy, the utilization or the expenditure, which is roughly about 2% of the total number of subsidized vehicles that was envisaged. So it's a far way to go in terms of the electrification target that we have. 30% at 2030 is the target that India has set. Now, if we look at the current trend in terms of the EV adoption, you'll see that 100% EV share in new sales could only be achieved by 2050 and not before that. So it might just be too late for the entire world in terms of climate change, the pace at which it is happening. So we need to really move fast on this strategy of electrification. In the commercial vehicles segment, I'll come back to this on the CV side. Some of the key findings that we have, and I can share with the audience as well. TCO for electric three-wheelers is much better than the electric four-wheelers. Of course, there are limited range which is there in the four-wheelers market. And the potential areas which are the low-hanging fruits in this sector would be postal services, waste management services, and the third-party logistics services, where people like Let's Transport and Udan and Porter, these could play a significant role in EV adoption. Notwithstanding, there are players like Flipkart and Amazon who have guaranteed certain percentage of their partner fleet to be electric vehicle in the coming days. And in terms of EV three-wheelers, while we discuss this with a number of stakeholders, we feel that it has a potential of 90 to 100% share in total sales by 2030. So that is one area, as I mentioned, is leading a silent revolution in this aspect of electric vehicles. In the two-wheeler last mile delivery, again, there is a huge market. And this sector, with slight nudge from the government, as also to the players who are engaged in delivery, be it Amazon or Flipkart or Big Basket, or the Swiggies and the Zomatos. So this sector has a huge potential in terms of electric vehicles. So I think with that, I would end this presentation. And if, in case Jeffrey or any other participant has any question, I will be happy to take it. Thank you.
Sure. I think that's fine. We'll come back to you on some of these topics. Meanwhile, Goldie, if I move to you, your company was also one of the first and largest electric mobility services, right? Where you offer connectivity to a lot of commuters daily through first and last mile transportation. So what role does a company like yours look towards playing? A market which exists, and then we all came to play into it. We are all the market makers here. In fact, everybody sitting here is a market maker in this sector. So what role do you look at playing towards driving this, especially let's focusing on Delhi, for instance?
Thanks, Jeffrey, for the question. Thank you, CII, for having us, and good afternoon to all the fellow panelists. So you're right. I mean, we started our journey. Essentially, we were India's first electric mobility services company way back from 2014. And in the last 6 years, we have delivered more than 65 million rides, right, in the last mile and the first mile, predominantly in Delhi NCR. And the role that we've played all the way over the last 6 years has that been to supplement and augment the public transport systems. I mean, that's one of the most fundamental premises of what, not about replacing something. It is fundamentally about how do we augment the existing public transport infrastructure in cities, right? And so we are, in a sense, an extension of the existing public transport systems, predominantly Delhi Metro in cities like Delhi, or other bus service in other cities. And so that's fundamentally the role. From the space that we operate in, and as Sharif just presented a short while ago, and there are enough reports over the last 5 years in terms of the segment within the vehicular segment that is best poised for EV adoption is three-wheelers, right? I mean, any which ways you look at it, that's where today the scales are. India is already the largest, EV country from a three-wheeler perspective. Count all the, e-rickshaws and so flying in the northern and eastern part of the country. So, it's a very well-poised market for EV adoption. That's why we're driving the transformation by providing the first and last mile services using electric three-wheelers, using very sort of technologically advanced features as far as the vehicles are concerned, providing the consumer tech experience that consumers aspire for today, ensuring it's a safe, convenient, and very economical ride, because India still is a price-sensitive market. We need to build to the needs and the aspirations at the same time of more than 70% of the pyramid, the Indian pyramid, right? And that's a very, very unique space that we offer our services in. So the role that Smarty and companies like Smarty can really look to play is help be a very, very natural extension of the existing public transport system. B, help provide those services in a manner that meets the aspirations of a modern India, which demands safe, convenient, technology-enabled. And C, ensure it's very, very economical, right? Because that always will be the bottom line. So those would be sort of the three key, role that I believe players like us, but also like us, many other players would need to play.
Right. Thanks. Satyam from Loan Tap. Now, your company is an online platform and focuses on millennials as a key segment. Now, this also is the right segment and the right profile who's interested in electrification and is more environmentally and socially conscious today. But the first time cost, as was mentioned also in the previous discussions, becomes a very, very critical deterrent for them. While nobody looks at it as the industry would like them to look, nobody looks at it in the sense that this is not only the cost of the vehicle, but it's the cost of the vehicle plus everyone looks is going out from your pocket in the first instance. But there are many models available globally where you have where they try to offset this. So what schemes and offerings in your view, because this becomes important as to how it can be bundled and how new buyers can be brought into the fold. So what schemes and offerings can be specially customized for the EV buyer and help in driving this preference in your view?
Yeah, thanks for this one, Jeffrey. And essentially, we always look at a problem from two angles. One, as Mr. Mishra also mentioned earlier, the quickest or fastest adoption always happens from the human behavior. So it will happen despite of the fact that the infrastructure and all will take some time to come back to the level. It will happen because people want it more and more. So the people are the one who has to accept it. So it's more of an adoptive nature, and it has to come into the easily sync up with the human behavior, and that is how the adoption of a technology or adoption of a product happens. We have seen it time and again across mobile penetration in India or globally also with the Walkman and all, which has happened earlier. So similarly, what we did with electric vehicles is that we always looked at that the cost of ownership of the vehicle over a period of 3 years is always 25 to 30% lower than the cost of ownership of a traditional combustion engine vehicle. And so we looked at it, and then we said that, hey, how to solve it? And the way to solve it was that we tried to peg, the first thing we did is that we tried to peg the monthly installment to the typical amount of a maintenance by the way of AMC or a fuel charges and all, which you will pay in a traditional combustion engine vehicle, which is typically comes to about 3,500 to 5,000 rupees, depending upon how much you commute or the kind of vehicle that you own or comes to your lifestyle. So this is what we pegged, and we tried to bring down the installment itself we conveyed to the market that you can own a vehicle in the cost structure where you maintain a vehicle. Okay, so it was a very important communication as far as the whole generation is concerned. Both it clicked with the traditionalist, where people so we see in cities like Delhi and all, it's not only the younger guys who are doing it. We also see city commuting categories also using electric vehicles. So this is what we did with the city commuting categories, where we said that out of 3,500, you can own a vehicle by spending this much in installment instead of paying it in maintenance and fuel charges. That is the first thing which we did. We also worked with some of the providers, like some of the Bangalore-based institutions, where we said that we will try to do it in leasing pattern with a buyback assurance from the manufacturer, where the manufacturer says that 3 years down the line, I'll be able to buy back the vehicle. That essentially means that the customer doesn't have to pay towards the vehicle cost in full. The customer only has to put maybe about 40 to 60% of the vehicle cost, and the remaining will be only the interest servicing of the amount initially funded. So both combinations worked in favor of quick conversion as far as the customer itself was concerned for the loan. And that was the biggest change which we brought into the system. And now we feel that it's more about that each of us have to be convinced about the segment, and we have to go about communicating the benefits of the segment. Pulling back a bit and talking about the segment itself, most of the people in cities like Pune, cities like Delhi and all, the segment which owns the city commuting segment commutes actually less than 12 to 15 kilometer to work. Okay, they don't go. I mean, typically 6 kilometer distance to the work for the mass 50 to 55% of the segment. It's 6 to 15 kilometers of the work. So the charging infrastructure, charging issues are not as much as it is made out to be. And the fact that the kind of initiative which Delhi government has taken in terms of the initially footing the bill of those 5,000 rupees and all, that actually shifts the needle more and more in the favor of having a smaller installment, having low maintenance charges, using it for a quick commuting, where you are not really looking for a performance bike. You are actually looking for a good use case. It's like a typical scooter kind of a stuff, and not a bike kind of a stuff. That is where we see the most of the market or most of the trends setting up across India, not only in Delhi.
Okay. So maybe a follow-on question. So what is the way forward for LoanTap in this segment? Because this is an area which has just started showing green shoots, and it's a long, long way to go. It's, in some sense, you can call it a sunrise sector, right?
Yeah.
So how do you see this as increasing its share in your overall portfolio and being part of your vision, also your corporate vision for the future?
So as an organization, we have dedicated a separate subsidiary for this business, which is iLoan Financials, which is an fully owned and operated NBFC by LoanTap, which will be doing only electric vehicles. And unlike a core focused organization at the top, which was on the top 7-8 cities, which is where the most of the credit demand comes or a consumption happens, this organization is currently present in 28 cities in India, and we look forward to tap the entire urban or semi-urban markets across India. So you'll be surprised to know that the number of vehicles sold by a dealer in Bangalore, Pune, or a dealer in Gurgaon or Delhi, and the number of vehicles sold by a dealer in Lucknow is almost same. Okay, so it is not a phenomena only of the top cities and in those categories. So like we saw a category like Hawaii getting charged on the road. Okay, near the Jhuggi Jhopdis or near those hutments or the gaons that we, or a pet area that we call in the local lingo. So it doesn't require those elaborate charging policies and all that may be needed for the premium end of the car segment and all the stuff. So we are not really looking forward to an infrastructure as a bottleneck. We say that it's more about market. The benefits has to be communicated to the user segment, the right user segment, which is and so we just expanded the city.
Right. So thank you, Satyan. So that leads me naturally to my next question to Mr. Mishra. So now he also mentioned about a lot of focus and an equal amount of sales in tier 2, tier 3 cities. A lot of focus till now by every mobility provider has also been on tier 1 locations. There are certain inherent advantages which tier 1 cities offer for sure, whether it's the thoughts on including PBS, for instance, in tier 2? And are there any specific challenges that you face now?
So I think as Satyam was mentioning, I kind of fully agree with him. Unfortunately, our OEMs never wanted to do anything new. They thought, okay, fine, so much of Hondas and Chetak, Bajaj are selling. India, nothing will happen, and anyway, if it happens, I'll come import from China. By the way, you'll not believe they don't even make the wheels here. Okay, so none of these guys had any clue of how to do the electric vehicles, and suddenly they realized that whatever they're making is not selling because they simply thought that okay, make a fancy and performance bike. It didn't happen. See, India is a very price sensitive market, and they will buy something which does their job in a price they want. That's why India has the maximum bikes in 100 to 150 cc, whereas these bikes are not available in any developed market for that matter. So I think a lot of blame goes to OEMs because they were happy with their status quo and they didn't want to, and they were very happy with we are the world's #1 two-wheeler manufacturer and consumer and blah 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 blah. So I think blame lies squarely on them, and if they fail and some foreign entity comes and does, I think they are completely to blame because they have done nothing. Frankly speaking, I can't find a single decent electric scooter in this country. Period. That's how it is. And we buy in bulk. You alone has more vehicles on the roads than whole country has produced. And this is a shame. So this is something, and of course, as he said, actually, two-tier cities where the elasticity of their income is much more restricted than the bigger cities will go for these much faster. But they will not go to Ranchi, they will not go to Lucknow, they will not go to Bulandshahr. They want only Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore and all that, which is not going to happen. Because these guys, mostly these companies are service-driven economies, salaries are higher, they will potentially buy something which is fancier. They will not buy something which is utilitarian. So utility essentially is more in smaller towns. So I think I fully agree, and Satyav, if you are interested and you want to have a bulk loan deals rather than chasing each individual buyer, please reach out to us. We'll reach out to you, and we'll take in thousands. Okay. Right now we are using equity money. We have worked out economic model where we are more than able to pay our EMI. Actually, we are cash positive on our operations, and which is another misnomer that you can't make money in this business. Correct. We don't want to buy on our equity. Obviously, it's a most
positive.
Yeah, we are gross margin positive. So essentially, people think that this is something which will not make money. It does make money. You can service those. This is, of course, equity finance is the most expensive finance. We don't want to do that. So far, we did that. So I think I fully agree with you. And the only way to go is go mass, and don't worry about class. Class will take care of itself, and provide these quality vehicles. I'm sorry, the top end manufacturers of this country have this, the first version was rusting within 3 months. Batteries were all over the place. It was like just a disaster. We were so disappointed. So I think hopefully, I don't know if anybody from OEM is here, but if they are here, they should listen to this. And we are their customers, not the individual Ramlal and Shailendra Kumar and whatever Murugan in Chennai. It is the fleet operator they should focus on, and they sell in millions. That's what I would like to say.
Right. So moving on from there to passenger transportation, from passenger to delivery vehicles, Goldie, now Smarty has recently entered into last mile delivery and logistics also using electric vehicles. This is an area which has going forward. So what is your view on this, your take on this, and what has been your experience so far?
So I think, the move to the last mile delivery was a natural part of a strategy, which, we started sort of our pilots last year. We saw success and a lot of demand, and early on in the year, around January, February timeframe, we launched a different business unit to tap into that opportunity. And then COVID happened, right? Which was kind of a blessing in disguise for us. While the passenger mobility witnessed a sharp downturn, it was compensated by the delivery side of the business, right? And in the last 8 months, between February and up till now, signed up pretty much all the marquee e-commerce company, the e-grocers, some of the air cargo companies to manage their last mile delivery. Now, what we have really seen is that where we are able to add tremendous value to our customers, it's a pure B2B operations, is by reducing their cost of deliveries by as much as 30% plus. And if you really do the maths, especially for e-com companies and all the companies that have to get shipments to consumers at their home, logistics, especially last mile, actually adds a huge amount of cost and puts pressure on their margins. Now, because of the fact that we are using electric vehicles, because of the fact that we are able to sort of create new skill sets, wherein a driver also delivers, because it's a electric vehicle, which is electric three-wheeler, the load carrying capacity is much higher, right? Those efficiency become so naturally evident that it's almost I would say irresistible for any e-commerce company today to say no to electric vehicles, right? If anything, there's a very, very clear mandate. If you look at both Amazon and Flipkart, who are the largest, right? They've made their intentions very, very clear, and we are glad to be working with them. So for us, it's been I would say a very timely diversification strategy to ensure that we are also in delivery. We are already India's largest, one of the largest, if not the largest. There is no metric to. We are done about 1.5 million shipments in the last 8 months. From the time lockdown really started, and that number is just constantly growing up. So we are absolutely bullish about this space we are in. We are confident. We are today offering our services in all the 4 cities of Delhi NCR and 5 cities outside Delhi NCR. All of this growth has happened in literally the last 8 months, right? So an absolutely phenomenal space to be in. And the good thing about, again, the last mile delivery and mobility, and given we have strong presence in both, is the common the common factor is the infrastructure. Given we've built India's largest EV charging infrastructure, a captive charging infrastructure across 10 cities, right, with more than 1,600 vehicles that can be concurrently charged, right, and few hundred that can be swapped. It gives a very unique I would say, foundation for us, right? So for us, it's very, very easy to balance it out wherever more mobility vehicles, wherever delivery demand goes up, we add more delivery vehicles, but the infrastructure remains the same, right? So that allows us a huge degree of, I would say, flexibility, huge ability to address clients' demand. I mean, we have gone live in 4 cities in last 6 weeks, right? So we've launched Kolkata, we've launched Pune, Bangalore, and Mumbai is going live next week, all in a space of 4 weeks because we invested in infrastructure upfront, right? So, you know, so that allows us the ability to really scale up very, very quickly around the country.
Right. So I think we are nearing the end of time, but I would like one closing comment from Sharif here. So Sharif, you have been involved a lot and have studied the FAME policies and their actual on-ground implementation, right? So this makes you adequately qualified, I think, to comment on what was right, what could be better, what was intended, and what eventually happened. So given the poor disbursement rate under FAME 2, what do you think are the ways to increase the offloading of funds for the remaining months, 18 months or so? Should DHI do a course correction midway and increase the share of the non-passenger segment? Are there other options that they should do to make sure that this really works out?
Exactly. So there are a couple of points on this, Jeffrey, and thanks for asking this, putting this across to me. So there is definitely a need to course correct. We are exactly in the midway between, you know, when the FAME 2 started and when it's going to end. We need to really critically analyze in terms of what are the sectors that are taking off, you know, naturally or organically, and therefore divert. It could happen from the 4-wheeler sector to 3-wheeler sector, which is the most promising sector emerging from this, you know, all these studies that we have done. So that is one. The second is that, you know, the dependence on subsidies. This was also highlighted in the previous session when I kind of heard eavesdropped on that conversation. Is that, you know, the dependence on how long are you going to, you know, rely on government subsidies? These markets really need to come up on their own. The TCOs will function out in terms of, you know, the economic operability in terms of some sectors that we have analyzed, and therefore focus on those sectors to really build this economies of scale. Jeffrey, thank you.
Right. So I think we are towards the end of the session, but clearly on the environmental side, whether it's electric fleets in metropolitan environments, it is indeed an enormous opportunity for significant improvements, whether it's in GHG contribution reductions, noise reductions, or even urban heating. So, but Delhi in particular has also received a lot of flack regarding air pollution, and whether fairly or unfairly, all this blame has come down to vehicles. Now, Delhi and some of the other cities and states have taken upon themselves to make sure that this perception can be corrected and can be changed, but in a pragmatic and practical manner. But net, what we understand is it's not only the government, but everyone on this panel has also articulated clearly the role that we can also play to make sure that the EVs are promoted and we can live in a far more sustainable world than the one we are inhabiting today. So several European cases show this is possible, and technology is also fast today narrowing this gap, this biggest bone of contention between a traditional vehicle and an electric vehicle, thereby giving an unbeatable value proposition. Until then, we also have, whether it's financing, whether it's a number of other options, to make sure that the brunt on the pocket is lightened. So I thank each one of you again for taking out your time and providing valuable insights on this topic. Thank you, everyone, and look forward to engaging in the future as well. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Vishal, over to you.
Yes, thank you, everyone. And we have speakers for the third session already lined up. So I request Gaurav to take it over. Gaurav from KPMG. Thank you. Gaurav, am I audible?
Yeah, I think I can hear you now. Is it? Am I audible? Can I? 1 second.
Yes, please. You are audible, and we have Mr. Piyush Prasad here, and others to join. We are actually running ahead of time.
Yeah.
So I'll just get other speakers also. They're logging in.
Yeah, no problem. I think the time is 1 o'clock, so maybe they would be joining in.
Hi, Gaurav. This is Piyush here.
Hey, Piyush, hi. How are you?
I'm good. I hope I'm audible.
Yeah, you are audible. Nice to see you.
Good.
You look younger than your WhatsApp image.
I do. No, I need to remove my beard to look younger. With this background. So,
Thank you. So Gaurav, we can start. There is a last minute change. Mr. Rahul Sharma from Revolt is not able to join because of some family thing. He has to be out. And Mr. Shreyas is joining. So we can start in the meanwhile with other speakers.
Okay, other panelists. So I hope we have Chetan, Manny, we have I can see Manoj. Manoj Khurana has just joined in. Okay, so Vishal,
Mr. Manny and Mr. Atul Arya from Panasonic will join.
Will join. Okay, so should we start or wait for them to join in? Maybe another couple of minutes.
yeah, I guess we can wait for 5 minutes. Supposed to start at 1. So
yeah, that's what I think. Everyone when I interacted on message, I was of view that they would be joining at 1. It is not appropriate.
Gaurav, in the meanwhile, what I can do is I can share the report that we released earlier this morning.
Sure.
So you can just give few words about it.
Absolutely. I can see Atul. Do you want to put this on the screen, Vishal, if you don't mind?
Can you see the screen now?
Yeah. Good afternoon, all. Thanks a lot. Thank you very much for this opportunity and also joining in around lunchtime. I hope I will not put you to sleep, and we'll have a very enriching session. Today in the morning, along with the Transport Minister and with CII dignitaries, we released a thought leadership document, which is shifting gears, the evolving electric vehicle landscape in India. Now, this thought leadership document has been created over the last couple of months and focuses on key aspects around electric mobility, particularly about India. We have seen a number of thought leaderships, number of knowledge papers, and which have speak a lot about the global landscape, etc. And that is getting lost with the electric cars into picture. Now, India is electric two-wheeler and electric three-wheeler market, along with significant opportunities around the energy operator business, maybe electric, maybe swapping or charging infrastructure, etc. So this document captures the essence of India. It has been tried to give a balanced view and taken some kind of cues about how do we see electric two-wheeler, electric three-wheeler market expected to evolve and evolve over the next say 5 to 7 years. How do we see the penetration? What is government doing? What are the various policy makers talking about? We have also tried to come up with a view on what are the key policy gaps that we see, and if those are bridged, we might see a faster adoption than what we are seeing here. A holistic document we have tried to capture along with the key segments, innovative business models around battery leasing, swapping, etc. Some segments which are expected to move faster, where the set of asset is faster and higher, the economics are coming out to be better, like the B2B segment, given enough emphasis over there. So overall, a piece of paper where we would like to take feedback from all of you dignitaries as you get time to go through this. This is a 35 odd page document, and happy to be connected with you on this offline and online as we move forward.
So we can start. Mr. Maini will join in another 2-3 minutes.
No
He's just
problem.
winding up his meeting. He was prepared for 1 o'clock only. But
Sure.
we're good to start, Gaurav. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Thanks a lot. Very good afternoon to all of you once again. I'm Gaurav from KPMG. I got the honor to moderate this session with such esteemed guests and panelists around here. And it's my absolute pleasure to be part of this marquee event, first event organized by CII. As we all know, electric two-wheelers are expected to be forerunner of electric mobility in India on the back of favorable central and the state government policies, giving reasonable discounts, reasonable incentives to begin with, along with increasing customer awareness. Over the last couple of years, we have seen that the customer is becoming more environment conscious, and also the events around COVID, pandemic into the picture, and stubble burning again taking the surface in Delhi, and both are a deadly combination for human lungs. I think it can't be a better or an opportune time to discuss electric mobility centered around Delhi and in particular around India, to see how do we see the adoption of electric two-wheelers. So the central point of our discussion today will be electric two-wheelers, key challenges that we are facing, key headwinds that we are facing, which are restricting the adoption of electric two-wheelers. We may dig deeper into with the esteemed set of panelists that we have here. Without wasting much time, without taking much of your time, let me quickly introduce to the set of panelists that we have. Here we have Piyush Prasad, who is National Business Head from Hero Electric. We have Manoj Khurana. He's Chief Executive Officer of a niche consulting firm, New Mobility. We have Mr. Chetan Manning, who will be joining us shortly. He's a technocrat, co-founder and vice president, Sun Mobility. We have Mr. Atul Arya, who is in a leadership role and Head Energy Business Division for Panasonic. We have Mr. Shreyas Shivulal, who is a founder and director with Misalio, a leading cutting-edge electric mobility firm. Welcome all. Thanks a lot for taking out time and joining me on this panel discussion. Let me open the round first before we dig deep into the questions and we start doing more talking around this. I think let me take the opening remarks from each one of you around how do you see the short-term electric two-wheeler market over the next, say, 12 to 18 months. Do you see COVID has impacted electric two-wheeler segment adversely, or it's an opportunity in question? Over to you. Anyone can start. Maybe a very brief 1 or 2 lines of opening remarks before we dig deep into the other aspects of our discussion. Maybe Piyush, you can start.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. Thanks for having me over for this panel discussion. So your question is, how do we foresee the next 12 months or 18 months? Before answering that, let's see what is 7 months of this financial year. We have seen an unprecedented time. Despite that bad times, if I may dare say, it has been reasonably good for the EV industry. We are foreseeing a growth over last year. We are foreseeing faster adoptions thanks to the perception of how the pollution actually impacts us, and also opening of eyes of many stakeholders and the end customers as well as the intermediary customers towards the benefit of EVs. So that's what has happened. So the next 12 months, my take would be, I am very positive and I'm very, I would say, optimistic and bullish about the growth of EV. Now, we have to, once we deliberate further on, we have to understand EV in two aspects. One is the commercial side, the business segment, which we call the B2B, and the other would be the B2C, which is the individual customers base. So I would see a growth far more significant in the B2B segment going forward. Notwithstanding the growth in the B2C, but the driver of the growth is going to be the B2B segment.
Yeah, thanks. I think if I move to Atul, to you, to take your quick opening remarks on the electric two-wheeler market and your outlook on that.
Well, I think a two-wheeler manufacturer has already spoken about two-wheeler market, so I think he was the best suited man. But I can still speak about it a little bit with my limited knowledge. I think overall there is a lot of push from various government agencies typically. And when I say speak two-wheelers, maybe I'm extending the definition a little bit and adding electric bicycles also, you know. And many of us may have observed that the trend on bicycling has caught up like anything in this last 6 to 7 months. If you speak to a bicycle manufacturers, or if you just walk into a shop and say, I want to buy a bicycle, you won't find one. You know, that was the situation at least a month back. So I guess typically that's a big change which we have seen. So this may have come from the health perspective, this may have come from the clean air perspective, both, or maybe government's push. But that's what is a key trend for me to really observe. And I guess the question of whether electric two-wheelers will happen or electric mobility will happen, which is the one which used to be debated if we were debating or talking 6 months back or a year back. Now it's only that how much it is happening and who is doing it. So I guess that's a big change which I have seen from whether it will happen or not is no more a question.
Thanks for putting it so clearly and so briefly. Maybe Manoj, your opening comments on the e-two-wheeler industry. If you want to combine the electric bicycles, you add a new dimension, and which is equally important, I believe. Over to you, Manoj. Manoj, you're on mute.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav, and thanks to CII for organizing this. And I think Piyush and Atul have already sort of set it up. I think the way I look at the market in near term and in long term, I think long term it is like it's an irreversible process. I mean, it's happening. It's just a matter of time, and it's really about when do we see the double-digit penetration numbers. Also, I think electric bicycle, I think I love that segment. And I think that segment is still early days, but I think the real potential of that segment is rural India and tier 3 towns. Because today, most of the cycles are sold in that area, and they have to drive or ride those for kilometers and kilometers to move from one location to another. I think over time, once we get the battery prices down enough to build an electric bicycle at around 8-10,000, you will see millions being sold in that segment. I think that is a matter of time, but the real potential for that is, I think Atul is an enthusiast. So in urban India, we have enthusiasts buying it, but in rural India, it is a mode of transportation, right? So that's where we'll see a huge potential. I think on going forward, coming to the main electric bike or electric scooter, electric bike segment, I think Piyush has already highlighted the tailwinds, if I may. Headwinds, I mean, we've been talking about them, price, charging, all of that. I think that's given, right? But I think he's already talked about tailwinds. But I think I think while we talk about B2B leading the market, and which is obvious, lower cost, and we already see that happening. E-commerce is now pulling. Companies like Amazon and Flipkart have a mandate to transition. I mean, IKEA has a mandate to transition to clean mobility, right? So there's a pull factor as well. And obviously there is a policy, I would say, platform which has already been laid out to push for it. But I think what is also driving B2B and maybe B2C not enough is, right, the product availability. Today, the B2B, the B2C customer has a wide variety to choose from on the IC engine market. Products which have lasted, which have demonstrated performance over time. In B2C market for electric, I see there is a little bit of a gap as of now to meet those that bar. I mean, to give a sense, like 50% of the scooters sold in India are Honda Activa. The ex-showroom price of that scooter was 55,000 before BS6 and 65,000 after BS6. At that price, we don't have even one electric scooter which can meet the same power output, same robustness, same range. I mean, I don't want to compare the range as is, but still, the way people look at it. So I think B2C market can only be pushed better with product availability. And we see OEMs are working on products. We see announcers. I think Misilio also is, and Shreyas can talk about it. They're also building a product. I think, but that is key. And I think, and just to sort of round it up, we have to look at EV adoption from two platforms. One is, okay, who is driving it in the beginning, and where's the growth coming from to begin with, and which is the B2B. But we have to remember that Indian auto market in two-wheelers is less than 5% is B2B. I'm being optimistic when I say 5%. Maybe it is lower. Cars is slightly bigger, but two-wheelers is lower. While that continues to grow very rapidly, ultimately the proof of the pudding is in the B2C market, which I think hopefully with new product launches we'll see over time.
Yeah, Manoj, thanks a lot. I think, and thanks for expanding the discussion basically, and that's what we were also thinking around. The meat of this entire pie lies at the B2C. While B2B is important actor in itself, because if you sweat your asset more, you would be able to have better economics. But at the same time, it has also been said and heard and discussed in various forums that if you focus more on B2B, you might end up making a white label product. Do you really want a kind of a differentiation that a customer today asks for? That is how we have got segment leaders, whether it's in a scooter domain or it is in the motorcycle domain defined by the CC class. So important point, but at the same time, the sticker price difference also restrict, giving the similar level of range and the speed or the performance parameters what the IC engine have a kind of set in the customer's mind. But expanding the discussion, taking it further to the B2B segment and coming to you, Shreyas, and B2B being one of the important actors and a significant segment leader. But ownership issues, I think that's another part which I wanted to touch upon, has always been one of the key areas which has restricted the growth. Having a two-wheeler is prerequisite to get a job in the delivery segment, not the other way around. So how have you been addressing that particular issue? How do you see the size of B2B market growing? And what is your business model built around this? Over to you, Shreya.
Sure. Sure. I mean, no, thank you so much for the introduction, and thank you for having me, first of all. But I think, being in this, in the last mile logistics space, from experience, there's one more kind of angle I'd like to introduce here, which is that, electric vehicles, if you're able to, actually upskill your technician team, can be much easier to from a maintenance perspective. Of course, the economic efficiency is there, and we've spoken about that already. Lower cost per kilometer, and even though there may be a high upfront cost, the cost of the battery is reducing, and now with the delinking of the battery and the chassis itself, the cost of ownership would, we're expecting it to go down even further, maybe even go below the cost of the chassis itself could be less than that of an equivalent ICE two-wheeler. From an ownership perspective, yes, I'm very much aware that being in this last mile logistics space, the predominant model is an aggregator model, where they would the riders would own their own vehicles before coming in and providing services. That's not the model that we currently work in, but that is a model that we would want to move towards eventually, something that's more asset light. But I think there are a couple of key factors that need to be figured out before that can happen. One is from a financing perspective. Last time I checked, I think the interest rates for a loan for an electric vehicle is that if you were to take a loan for an ICE vehicle. So it's financing would be the key factor there in figuring out the ownership model going forward for B2B fleets.
Thanks, Shreyas, and welcome you, Chetan, again, and being part of this panel discussion. Chetan, moving over to you, we briefly touched upon how do we see market on the B2B side and B2C side. Maybe we'll delve more into both these aspects. But wanted to pick your brain on what you had been a firm believer of before anyone, I think, here on the panel was thinking around the battery swapping. A couple of years back, when I was part of many forums and discussions, we used to discard it. Today, we have actually started seeing the real fruit, and everyone is talking about the range anxiety can only be killed if you have a well set up battery swapping networks around you. Now, the key aspects I would want you to please touch upon is how do they be a key enabler for an electric two-wheeler in particular? Because on a fleet side, we have got some understanding that it works beautifully. But for electric two-wheeler penetration or increasing the adoption of electric two-wheeler, what role a swapping system can help us or can work as an enabler? And also, if you can give us some view about the economics, how do they stack up?
Sure. So thanks again. I think you very rightly talked about the range anxiety part of it, and that's both from a B2B fleet point of view or a B2B2C or a B2C directly and personal mobility. It's probably the same perspective. And I think the perspective on range anxiety is very relevant because people are making their purchase decisions based on 1% of their requirement and not 99% of the requirement. So it's that one day that you decide to have the extra, it's Diwali Big Bash and you've got to do the extra evening shift and you need that extra kilometer, or from a personal mobility point of view, that's the day you did your extra sales call and had to take your wife somewhere in the evening and the kids. So you have that in your mind. And so all of a sudden, if you need to address that, that's probably 100, 120 kilometers, which means you discount what an OEM tells you. and you want something like 140 kilometers. No harm in getting 140 kilometers, but if you're using 40 kilometers every day, it doesn't make sense carrying that much battery around. So I think the big driver is both the cost and the anxiety that is very fundamental in nature on this area. And the swapping, of course, addresses both these at a very important level. And the other thing that's very important to understand is on a scooter, unlike a car, it's hard to have thermal management in a scooter that's here. So when you're in Delhi in the summer at 45 degrees, your battery temperatures will get to that level. And when you drive, could get to up to 50. And then you want to charge after that. Either it won't allow you to charge, or you suddenly have a life that's half that number.
I think we have lost you. Anyone able to hear Chetan? Okay, I think we have lost him. I think his screen is frozen. Okay, so
I guess he logged off and he'll log in again.
No problem, no problem. So maybe in the meantime, Atul, if I may come to you, I think he's back. Sorry, Chetan, we actually lost you in between.
Mr. Manny, can you hear us? Are we audible?
Hi, I'm sorry. I think there was a problem with my computer. Am I audible?
Yeah, very well now.
Okay, great. I'm just going to switch across to the phone device. So I was just saying that the temperature is a big challenge on this area, and therefore what happens with the battery life being less than half, you probably have a challenge related to getting the warranty from it. And the other part is that the battery life starts to decrease over time. And so after 2 to 3 years, you start to see maybe you get 60, 70% of your battery left because of higher temperatures. In the swapping model, it's a service, which means actually in 2 to 3 years, you probably have a battery performance that's 30% better, versus in reality, if you owned it, it would maybe 20 to 30% less. So from a consumer point of view, the capability to upgrade, the capability to not own a piece of technology on this area and be part of that becomes very important. And you're literally lowering his risk level from cost, from technology, and from pricing. I think that's very critical for adoption, where the risk can be lowered on all aspects of this area. As far as the economics go, with swapping, removing the batteries, you could get electric vehicles that would be cost neutral or cheaper than IC engine vehicles. And when I say this, I mean about similar performance. Typically, if you reduce the performance, of course, you'll get it even lower. But imagine if you had a 100cc scooter and you replace that with an electric scooter that gave you the same 100cc performance. So performance wasn't an area. You get probably cost neutrality in terms of product. And in terms of energy cost, you could probably be 20 to 30% lower. And in terms of maintenance, you'd be around 40% lower. So net overall, it is a fairly big savings, considering that in the shared mobility market, energy and the operations are probably the large drivers on this area. And that's and of course, the life of the vehicle is generally slightly longer with fewer moving parts.
Thanks a lot, Mr. Manny, for summing it up and putting all the aspects so very well. Maybe if I move on to the only OEM we have on the panel with us, Piyush, and maybe take the same questions which I posed to Mr. Manny. How do you see, because the challenge which I see is that the standardization of batteries is very important when you are getting into battery swapping. And many of the times we have seen that, at least in the cars and many other automobiles, is that the batteries may be one of the areas of differentiation. When you are selling your vehicle to a B2C segment, it may add to a significant area of differentiation. So how do you see as an OEM and marry that with swapping? Because if you don't do that, you may not be able to come up with a product which is able to match the performance of the likes of Hero or Honda Electric, etc. So the sweet spot has to be bridged. Multiple ecosystem solutions are there. What are your views about this, Piyush, on this?
Thanks, Gaurav. That's quite a question for me as well as for Chetan. Okay, so let me put it like this. Currently, what we are doing is, as we already know, all our batteries are portable. They're very simple machinery that we have, very easily portable and very easily chargeable, right? And the actual usage, you can very easily charge it and drive it. Uh, yes, in terms of standardization of battery, it goes a long way. It goes in the long term business sense. It makes absolute relevance, and going forward, that's the way it's going to be. But currently, look, let's understand the key challenges. If I can just digress a bit, let's understand the key challenges. So once we see what is being required by the customer, let's talk about the business customer first. He needs efficiency. He needs economy, and he needs ease. We call it the three E's. So when we speak about economy, we all are very well aware that TCO makes a lot of sense, right? But at the same time, along with the economy, there's a question of performance. So if you are able to improve the performance in terms of your the speed and the range, then there is a cost on the efficiency in terms of the TCO. So you have to find a sweet spot. Second is when we speak about the efficiency. The efficiency is, the downtime has to be less, especially when we speak about the business customers. The downtime has to be less. The SLAs have to be absolutely appropriate. Battery has to be charged all the time, be it through swapping or be it through the physical charge. It has to be ready all the time, and it should be very easy. So how has the industry progressed over the time? I would say we are progressing. We have not yet progressed. We are in the process of improving our services on an everyday basis, because end of the day, it all boils down to what best after sales service happens. Today, we speak a lot about sales. We speak a lot about the number of vehicles on the road and how that can be increased. But to ensure the regular number keeps increasing, we have to ensure the right services are in place. So that is where our focus has been. For a business customer, for me, it is more important to ensure there is minimum downtime. We are working at 90% efficiency. There has to be a minimum downtime, and quality of the product and the services has to be at a particular level, so that to cater to his business demands. Very recently, we launched a new scooter. In fact, it's all over the news that we have a range of 200 plus. So take care of the range anxiety, wherein we have a scooter which takes care of the long range business needs. Product improvements are happening over the period of time. In fact, in previous session, we heard Mr. Mishra, I think he's still there on the call, in which he said the OEM should be working on delivering and developing better products. Hang on, sir. That's what we are doing. On a daily basis, on an everyday basis, we are trying to improve our products, and especially these services. Till now, the discussion hasn't steered toward much about services. So the services are equally important. And just to marry the question back to the TCO, if the services are not good, the TCO doesn't make sense, right? So we have to ensure the right product, the sweet spot between the economy and performance, and the right services after sales. And standardization, yes, long term, absolutely agree with you, and I will leave it to my friend Chetan to delve further upon the standardization of batteries.
Sure, Piyush. Thanks a lot, Piyush, for your views and insights. And sorry to put you on spot on this question. I know it was a bouncer from my side. Now, if I go to Atul, and Atul, since we are speaking about batteries and the cost of the electric two-wheeler, or any electric vehicle in question, battery plays the significant role. And this entire thinking, different kind of business models, that it is swapping, fast charging, whatever you talk about, the center stage or the central point is batteries. So wanted to understand your views about how do we see that ecosystem getting built in India, and how do you see the price curve going down over the next couple of years? Maybe two questions to you.
So first of all, I must compliment you that you took 26 minutes to ask this question about battery price. Normally, it's the first 30 seconds. This is the question. Though Manuj on the 6th minute asked this question in any case, in a subtle way. So I think that's a great progress, by the way. In a 1 hour session, you spend 26 minutes without talking about battery price. No, the point here is that I'll go back to what Manuj said, about a scooter price, for example, which is available at 65,000 rupees and battery being expensive and all those things. Let's go by the general understanding that battery is 40 or 50% or some percentage of the scooter or a vehicle. And let's take it out and make it 0. Do you still get a scooter at 65,000 rupees of the same performance? At least I don't know. I don't think there is one, but that's where the catch is. The rest of the scooter or the vehicle itself is also expensive versus a ICE vehicle. So we are focusing on battery cost. Yes, great, but it's already following a curve. We need to do the same with the rest of the vehicle. It's extremely important. So even if you make battery as 0, you're still not able to compete. Now, where do you go from here? That's one. And second point is that we have over-fixation to some extent, I would say, to bring scooters upfront cost exactly at par with the ICE scooter or ICE car in case of ICE EV car. But reality is that there is a cost economic while running. The running cost is extremely low, and everybody understands this. This is the duty of the ecosystem to make that customer aware, even in B2C case, that you see, look, you buy a scooter and you put a petrol which is 75 rupees a liter, and in this you can just charge your electricity for 5 rupees or so for a kilowatt hour. And I think so probably if everybody wants to understand that when the battery price will reach such a point, when electric scooters will be exactly at the Honda Activa's price, if I may refer that name, probably never. And we should not be focused too much on this. We should be focused on other actions. And I think this is rightly so, that scooter prices will come down because we don't have the scale as the scale of the current ICE scooters or ICE motorcycles. All Hero Electric or Ather or any other scooter manufacturers, they manufacture scooters in thousands versus millions of the other big brands. So once the scale comes up, the prices are likely to fall. Coming to battery price now, very appropriate question. I think battery has been doing a lot in terms of falling prices. We have been doing ourselves a lot as a company, inventing newer chemistries, newer form factors from 18650 to 2170, etc., etc. And this is a continuous journey, changing variety of materials and testing. The point here is that it takes a little bit of time to really bring a product in the market as far as battery is concerned, because if you make changes which are fundamental in nature, especially in the chemistry, then you need to be very careful while you test it and come to a certain promised level of performance, whether it is cycle life, whether it is safety, whether it is temperature performance and all those things. So over a period of time, we expect these prices will come down further. In the meanwhile, I guess what is extremely important, which already has been spoken, is the battery swapping or battery standardization. Even if some people say, I don't want to go for swapping, but it's still a good candidate for standardization, right? Even if your batteries can be charged at home, because as long as it helps to bring the prices down, and that's where I believe the beginning has been made now recently. there is a discussion which is happening on a sort of a battery standardization consortium. Some people have already joined in, and some people more likely to join over the next few months, I believe. And I think it's extremely important. We can take multiple examples. Ford and General Motors cooperated together and collaborated together almost a decade back on building transmission systems which are common to them. And the idea was to have common parts to be able to take advantage of the scale and the volume. And similarly, in the space of electric vehicles, by the way, I'm sure many of you know, Honda, Suzuki, Yamaha, and Kawasaki, all four Japanese electric or motorcycle manufacturers are collaborating together to work on the electric vehicle. So they will compete. At the same time, they will cooperate because it's a small market. In the beginning, there is a need to bring in solutions which are adaptable. Right now, I think this is one of the major reasons for us to not see the right battery prices, because everybody is trying to use a lot of people are trying to, let's not say everybody now, because there are people who have joined in, but a lot of people are really doing their own thing, in terms of, and you also alluded to that in the beginning, saying that, that's a differentiator, right? So if Ford and General Motors can agree on a common transmission system for automatic transmission and still differentiate their products, and Honda and Kawasaki can do that, I believe in India also, we can support each other, take advantage of our resources, take advantage of our technical abilities, and get that scale and show it as a positive sign. So I'm very confident with the conversations which I have been having in last, let's say, few months. And I believe the mass is gathering around now. And very soon, I guess, we will see a lot of activity on this, which is likely to bring down the cost of batteries dramatically in India, not necessarily by reducing the cost of cell.
Thanks a lot, Atul, for not mincing your words at all, putting it clearly, cutting edge the way you do it always. And I hope that was a compliment that you gave me. Moving on to Manoj. Manoj, now if you look at, say, the charging infra, I think government is also pushing, and we have seen a number of tenders doing rounds, ESL doing a lot of work. There's captive chargers, there are chargers. Even Delhi EV policy talks about you can set up a charging chargers at different locations. There's going to be a democratization of chargers. Wanted to pick your brain on or understand your views about how do we see, or are we putting our energy in the wrong direction, if I may say so. Because on a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler, we might not need that huge infrastructure of chargers. We may need for cars, and cars are some time away. So we should focus our energy somewhere else, or budget somewhere else, maybe customer awareness, like a Swachh Bharat kind of a program, which is a marquee event and created a lot of awareness. Over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Gaurav. I think let me first address the standardization bit very briefly, and then I'll come to the charging bit. I think I would not lose my sleep over standardization right now, right? I think today swapping is about proving that it works, and I think Chetan is doing a great job at proving that. And despite or without standardization, he claims that he has a business model that works, right? So let's not break our sleep over it. Standardization is about optimization, right? Obviously, ideal case is one battery that fits everybody, right? Less ideal case is one battery, 5 batteries which fit everybody, right? So it's really about SKU management over time. So I don't foresee a scenario, despite all consortiums, that everybody would use same battery. That is not going to happen. People will use batteries which fit their needs. Fleets will probably use common batteries more over consumer products. Some companies will never become part of these consortiums. Some, and a lot of them will become. I think standardization will happen over time. There are ways to do it. And it could be done by Sun, by partnering with 10 OEMs. It could be done by OEMs, the way Atul has described it. And I also think we have to figure out what is standardization. Are we talking about form factor standardization? Or are we talking about safety, reliability? So these are 3 different things. Also, I think there is already standardization at cell level, Why do we want standardization at pack level, for example? I mean, we are not building 100 different types of cells, right? There are 5-7 different types of cells, and there's already standardization. So I think it's a question which will keep coming, and it will resolve itself over time. But the bigger, I think, point is swapping seems to work. The business model seems to work. We can optimize over time. Now coming to charging, I think if you look at all government charging notes, documents, guidelines, EOIs, all those charges are not for two-wheelers or three-wheelers. They are for cars. It starts at 3.3 kilowatt. No scooter has the ability except Ether to take that kind of charge even at AC, and it goes up to 100 kilowatt now. So the problem with two-wheeler, three-wheeler is there is no template to adopt. Right, car charging globally, there is an example of how it is done. The kilowatts may vary depending on where you are, but we largely know how it works. But I think in two-wheeler, three-wheeler side, there is some sort of a confusion as to what does a charging network for a two-wheeler or a three-wheeler look like, right? I mean, swapping has taken center stage in India largely because, as Chetan already mentioned, thermal management is an issue. You can't really charge it in 30 minutes or 1 hour. What do you do, right? So you have to do swapping. But other than swapping, right, is there any other play for charging in two-wheelers, three-wheelers, or it is going to be swapping all over, including B2C? And we have examples of Gogoro in Taiwan, right, and the platform which now Yamaha also uses and a bunch of other local OEMs use. They are doing it in B2C as well, right? So maybe swapping is the only solution in two-wheelers, for example, right? Unless we see a new chemistry come down the line which fast charges in 5 minutes without need for thermal management, and it's cheap as well, right? But by the time probably we'll already have enough network that people will say, let's just use it, right? So it's a bunch of things happening parallelly. But I think when it comes to charging, the way Indian government has gone about it, it's real. I mean, and that's where the dichotomy is. You mentioned cars is a little far away. Why are they putting up chargers which is for cars, right? So that's a dichotomy we continue to see. But I think at this stage of the industry, I would not worry about over optimization. It's okay. Let's put something. Even if it leads to some utilization, it gets some cars out there. It's good. Honestly, Atul or Panasonic cannot set up a factory for two-wheelers only. I mean, they want like double-digit gigawatt demand. A car battery is 15 times bigger than a two-wheeler battery, right? And so it adds to the total volume that the market will create for them. So I think all segments are great, but on charging side, I think there is no. I think somebody still needs to envision what does the network look like for small vehicles.
Yeah, thanks. So before
Gaurav, just coming in here.
Sure.
Talking of dichotomies, there is a dichotomy here saying that we don't need optimization, whereas everybody is talking about optimization of cost. So, let's proceed whatever the way.
No, I think we need scale first, and then we can optimize. Today we are talking about business school numbers. Where are we, right? 126,000 two-wheelers last year, 90% of which are actually low speed. Right. So let's see what happens with optimization, and a lot of constraints is scale takes the backseat. Let scale happen first, and then we will optimize.
I think before I thanks Manoj and thanks Atul. Before I conclude on battery standardization, I think that's one of the important key point which came up. I wanted to pick maybe a couple of sentences from you, Chetan, quickly on that.
Sure.
Now, how do you see, or what is the importance according to you, because your business model is centered around battery standardization, at least for the certain voltage levels, if I may say so, and for accelerated adoption of electric two-wheelers. After that, I'll come to you, Shreyas.
Sure. So I think just to take from where Manoj is looking at it, what we try to do from our point of view is create standardization across two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and small four-wheelers. So it's the same battery format across 23 million vehicles produced every year in the country that could use it, which would give you variability in terms of range and performance. So I think the idea is there is a set of standardization within organizations that are trying to do it already on this front, right? The second is you're offering that to the OEM, which means he doesn't have to do neo variants for every area. So we're working with certain OEMs. The first product is coming out, the second one's coming out. It's taking 2 to 3 months to integrate the second platform, because you've again standardized everything, the interfaces, the communication, the sizing, and all of it. So it really reduces time on that area, right? But when I look at a broader picture of standardization, I think there should be, the innovation is so high that you should not curtail innovation by standardization, right? The batteries are going up 30%, new performance, done 30%. Imagine if you had the same size battery and the same level, that would just be disaster for the industry. But there could be 3 areas we could focus on. The first is, I think, the voltage level, because it makes very important for the ecosystem to arrive at a voltage, right? India has 220 volts. You don't want a 110 and a 220 and all of this all around, right? Now, globally, for all small form factors up to 15 kilowatts, 48 volts is the standard, right? Because it's a safety standard. Very important for us as a country. Once you exceed 48 volts, you need isolation. Now think of a scooter that's underwater, its wheels are underwater and has a hub motor. What does that do for you? Think of someone servicing in the middle of a rural area and he gets above 48 volts, he'll get shocked. At 48 volts and below, you can touch the terminals, nothing happened to you, right? That's where every global company is going on this area. Unfortunately, we've got legacy from China, where it went from 48 to 60 to 72. There is no performance issue. We can give you performance at a 48 volts that's 2x of some of the 72 volt bikes today. So it's not a performance issue at all. So this thought process is incorrect, which is unfortunately existing here. And I think it's very important as a country we do it. Now, if you do it, every OEM has the same battery voltage size and potentially a communication strategy, which means from an OEM point of view, coming down to that transmission analogy, they can integrate anything. Now, maybe the size may be slightly different because they're form factor. That doesn't make too much of a difference. The voltage and communication protocol is sufficient from an OEM. The next part is safety. There needs to be a set of safety standards because these are being removed and put it back. ARA has already defined them for regular batteries. We may want to make it slightly more robust. What if the battery drops? What if other things happen? So create a more robust platform around safety, which is very important for the industry so that we don't have any challenges as we take this forward, right? The third is, how does consumers know what is good or bad? They're all certified. They come and they say, we want an operation. There should be a sort of star rating equivalent, like is in energy efficiency. In air conditioners, you have a 5-star rating, right? Imagine if someone said, well, because of the power it has or certain other capabilities it has or the energy the battery has, you rate it as a star rating. Now a consumer knows, oh, I have a 3-star battery, a 4-star battery, a 5-star battery. I would pay different for different areas because I get different performances, right? And they can choose. So we want something that the OEMs can use. We want something that's very fundamental on safety. And we want something that the consumers can understand what to differentiate. I think our focus should be to standardize these areas first and keep innovation open and then let other things fall as it takes forward.
I think very interesting. Yeah, I think this kinds of gives enough emphasis on innovation. At the same time, you may continue with the standardization. I think both are likely to stay, and the market is opening up. You can't take bet on each and everything and say that nothing, the other thing is not going to come. Very important. And if I come to shares and shift gears slightly from what we are discussing to, and if you move to the enablers for the time being, what are the key enablers basically you would like to see? Government has came up with a notification recently where they had said the batteries can be delinked from electric 2-wheelers or electric 3-wheeler sales. Do you see that one of the stepping stone from the government side, or it is not a well thought through step from the government side? Maybe share your views on that. And on the same question, Piyush, I would like your comments as an OEM on this.
Yeah, sure. I think this is a highly contended kind of subject matter, the delinking of the vehicle and the battery itself. My point of view is that it's definitely going to it's going to drastically reduce the cost of actually acquiring an electric vehicle, and I think in a lot of ways, from what we were discussing, it actually opens up a roadmap towards standardization. But at the same time, I completely resonate with what my fellow panelists are saying, that we shouldn't standardize too much too quickly. but I think it does provide a sort of a roadmap. I think there are obviously other incentives as well, from either a subsidy side, tax incentives or disincentives from ICE vehicles. So I think in my view, it is going to drive more adoption in the long run. At the same time, it creates opportunities for for standardization as well as energy as a service kind of plays.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Piyush, if I come to you, how does the OEM, an OEM like you, who is currently the market leader in the electric two-wheeler domain, even though we are selling limited number of vehicles, you have the legacy, you've been there for over a decade now and understand this segment very well. How do you see this move coming from the government? Do you see it as a very well thought through step, taken industry along with them, or this is out of a jiffy because they want to create some penetration level which has not come through from whatever incentives are there on the table currently?
Gaurav, you answered it yourself. So there are certain suggestions or certain I would say indications which come from the government, well-meaning, but it's more like a roadmap rather than an immediate hit or a quick hit. One of them being the battery and the vehicle to be separated. We welcome it, but it's a roadmap. It's not going to change the landscape on an immediate basis, but we are ready for it. What I will pick up from this point is when we talk about a faster adoption, all this is to be done to improve our adoptions, right? So what can we do? So one point what I'll pick up from Shreyas in his previous statement he made, we all need to ponder about is the finance options. So as we know in EV, the finance penetration is only 5%, wherein in a ICE petrol two-wheeler, it's almost up to 50%. So that is, if you talk about the key adoption, we speak a lot about technology, but let's think from the end customer point of view. Who's going? It's not me and you. It's going to be the end customer. If it is not feasible for him, if we do not create that finance option for him, it's going to be difficult. We have financiers available, but what is the level of penetration? So that's something the government can come up with. Why not give it a mandate? Now, I'm just throwing open one point. Why not the government gives a mandate to the PSU, right, to take EV as some kind of a priority sector? I don't know what is the right terminology in banking, but some kind of a priority sector for EV adoption from some PSUs. So we have private financiers and some fintech organizations doing finance for EVs, but is that sufficient? That's a question to ponder upon. That's one. Yeah. Number two, we spoke a lot about the adoption and we spoke a lot about the FAME 2. We know that how things have gone wrong with FAME 2. Despite the fact great work has been done by the Delhi government and the other governments as well. But how long does it take for us to realize the following? How long does it take to make the correction? How long does it take to simply include the low speed, which is 80 to 90% of this segment today? How long does it take to remove the range criteria in FAME 2? So these are the aspects where the adoption can be made faster. In fact, as we just heard from the fellow panelists, that few of the e-com and the food and the grocery organizations have got a mandate of converting to EVs. That's happening in a phased way. The best way to put it across it, it's happening in a phased. What if the government makes it mandatory? Like in Delhi government, there was a nudge given to the last mile deliveries or the e-com organizations to be using EVs. What if it becomes a mandate by the government itself that you need to use EVs? That is how the adoptions are going to happen. See, technology, the cost of batteries, swapping, charging infrastructure, these are all ecosystems which will help. But what will really help is demand. Once the demand comes, like Manoj was talking about, the scale. So we have to work upon scale. I pick up that point from him and I completely agree. everything will fall into place once a scale comes in. All these ecosystems, all these new technologies and new fundamentals and thoughts will be put in practice once we see the scale.
Thanks.
I wanted to add a point on the FAME and the policy side on the swapping. I think that we've all agreed it's the right direction and it's the roadmap on this area. But where there is a gap is on the pieces of the puzzle that aren't put together. So, for example, today FAME policy is not having clarity of how the subsidy will come through to an end customer if he goes for a swap solution, right? This clarity, like Piyush talked about on several other aspects, it's been over a year and things haven't come through. So on one side, if the government is very serious about accelerating it, the vision is correct, but the implementation has to be now faster and more concise, right? When you separate the vehicles, the batteries will be at 18% and the vehicles are at 5%. So there will be a disadvantage. That's not the idea. You're finally trying to get a rickshaw driver or a scooter guy to go on it. He should not be paying an extra amount because newer models envision him to move forward, right? Similarly, if you were to charge your vehicle or swap your batteries, you'd be paying 18% in service charges versus 5% for any transportation of the vehicle. So again, when new business models come in, when new areas of technology come in, the holistic procedures to say this is the goal of the government and it should encapsulate everything. So I think there is one important step that has to happen on this front. And the second is there's a ground reality issue, right? So today, even in several cities, you try to go register your vehicles without batteries and stuff like this. You have challenges with RTOs, right? So OEMs and others face a lot of real problems on this area. You try to put up an infrastructure and you get a transformer costs and permissions and all of this stuff and challenges, and you still can't get the electricity rate that states have put up and says, here's a lower cost rate. In reality, you're not able to get it. So there are a lot of things where policies have been put in a top level, but if they just implement them to the spirit, we will give a big push to the industry. And that needs to be the focus right now of governments, is to really try to make sure the policies are followed in spirit in this area.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks a lot, Mr. Mani. I think in the last session, previous session, basically, been talking about a few aspects around this. And Delhi policy in somehow covers, has touched upon how if the vehicle is sold without battery, how would the incentive be divided, if a swapping station is to be set up. They've well thought about certain new business models. And maybe when FAME was getting formulated, they were not very sure about all these business models.
I agree with you. Delhi has been much more forward thinking and they've taken all these learnings into consideration. I think the key on the Delhi side is to put in a quick structure to allow infrastructure to come up. You want many private players to come out, and the idea of putting 200 odd charging stations or have spots for them around the city would be something, if framed correctly, can really make a city go, and it could be the leader in the country where it could be a nice model for other cities to follow.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think we are coming towards the end of our time which was allotted. Maybe one last question to some of you. And Atul, if I come to you, and we all been in all the panels, I think you've been part of for the last couple of years. Demand remains one of the key question mark. And though government came up before COVID, a draft document on setting up of battery manufacturing or cell manufacturing in India. Localization is becoming very important. If you want to be qualified to get the incentives under FAME, the percentage is increasing from 30%, 40% to like 70% in next year. If batteries or the cells are not getting manufactured in India, I think we'll be losing the bus. So do we need to lose our sleep completely on demand is not there, volumes are not there, or you may go with a leap of faith that e-mobility is going to grow, volumes are going to come, and I'm going to put my money and set up a cell manufacturing plant in India. Your views on this?
If you ask this question to any businessman about leap of faith, I'm sure you know the answer. A businessman is always looking for profits, really, and that's where it is, to be honest. The question about demand being there or not, I think it's in progress, work in progress. So like everybody has spoken, and I spoke earlier as well. Demand is steadily growing. There is no question about it. The industry stakeholders, the participants may have different opinions about things, how to take it, whether there is a standardization requirement, whether there is testing requirement, policies are required, different kind of policies. We will always have something more to ask for, and this is going to continue over a period of time. Delhi policy is better because they have seen other policies. So, at this point of time, there is a race among other states, and some of the states were ready with their policies to release, but they looked at Delhi policy, and now there is a race saying that let's do better than this. So I think this is a progression which is happening over a period of time, and this is continuing to drive the demand. Whether there will be a cell manufacturing in India, I would say, do we have anything right now manufactured in India with respect to EV? Pretty much everything comes from wherever, let's not take names, and gets assembled over here. The complete scooters, the complete stuff gets assembled here. So I'm not really sure if there is something which is 50% of the vehicle, should make a jump start to manufacture here, whereas the rest of the 50% of the vehicle has many small components, which are small ticket size, which are smaller investments, and can be localized. How to make two-wheeler components. We know how to make car components. We know how to make electrics. We know how to make wire harnesses. We know how to make headlights and stuff like that. So at this point of time, as we speak, a large number of electric two-wheelers sold in this country are. Therefore, I would say we need to still walk that path and start to localize other things. For sure, I'm not running away from the question saying that whether we should manufacture cells in India or not. I think as a passionate person, I would like to, as an organization, as a company, we would definitely want to do it in India. However, it needs to make a business sense for us. And then the decision is yes, we are going ahead.
Thanks a lot. I think we are about to close the session. We have come very close to the fact. And any last comments from any of the panelists? I think the house is open. If you want to make any last comments, happy to hear that before we close it.
Gaurav, just quick comments on demand. I think that seems to sort of have gained some traction as we come to the end. I think if you look at globally, I don't know of any market which has seen great penetration without regulation. Pick up any market, right? There's some form of regulation, whether it's bottom-up driven by cities, bottom-up driven by state, for example, California, or top-down driven by China in form of NEV credits. So I think at some point, and Piyush brought it up in a small shape where he said e-com companies could be mandated. So that's a regulation. I think in some shape or form, we will need it. Are we ready today? Maybe that's a question government has to ask itself. But I think we will need it at some point. Also, I think when it comes to demand, I think there are two ways of looking at it. I think OEMs are best placed to create market demand. That's how I look at it. But the regulation could be on the supply side, the way you have it in China and California, right? Where they say, or even in Europe now, the regulation is on emissions. So all the regulations are on the supply side. Because the way I look at the market even today, I think there is a lot of demand for electric vehicles. There's a shortage of supply. So unless we beef up that side of the equation, I mean, and I say that because people have been buying vehicles for tons of years, right? There's a very clear price demand curve which you can draw for India, right? The question is, how does the supply curve meet the demand curve at the price which is palatable to consumers? So if we think of regulation, let's think it from the supply side.
Great, thanks a lot, Manoj. I think we are going to close the session. Thanks a lot, everyone. Thanks for your time. Thanks for summing up your views, putting it candidly, clearly, and we take the leaf out from there. We work closely with the CII as being a knowledge partner, and at various forums we'll be able to take these points forward to the government as the case be. Thank you very much from my side, Gaurav Arora here. Over to you, Vishal.
Thank Gaurav.
Thanks a
Thank
lot,
you.
Gaurav.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone, and look forward to engaging with all in the near future. Have a safe day. Thank you.